We are Outvertising, the ad industry's LGBTQ+ advocacy group. We exist to make our industry completely LGBTQ+ inclusive
in a world that isn't.
Advertising can and should be used to bring about change. Positive representation smashes stereotypes and can help remove prejudice. Everywhere, for everyone.
and we make it happen.
We encourage continuous learning to keep up with our constantly changing world.
We inspire creatives to use purpose as a tool, not just as a message.
We help people understand the impact that their visibility can have.
We ensure agency leaders have the empathy needed to relate to everyone on their team. We make sure inclusion transcends tokenism, and we treat ally as a verb.
Because of us, best practice is illuminated and celebrated.
We are a community of volunteers who are passionate about creating a more inclusive and supportive environment for LGBTQ+ people.
We'll never shy away from pushing our industry towards a deeper kind of inclusion.
From the organisations we work in to the content our industry produces, together we'll create and celebrate every step forward on the way to progress, no matter how small. Together, we're advertising. Together, we're advertising. Together, we're advertising.
All right.
Yes, hello, welcome. Together we're advertising, eh? Did you get that?
I feel like there's a lot of growth gone on since that.
Really
My
nice.
hair.
Yes, I couldn't look at that.
No.
Yeah.
So, welcome to Outvertising Live 2023. Be seen. What an amazing room full of people we have here today. I believe the phrase is under-prepare, over-deliver. Am I right? Well, that's what you're going to get from me today anyway. So, this is the second time. Oh, whoopsie. Already. I am Lucy Killip. My pronouns are. I am the joint CEO of Outvertising for a bit longer. I am wearing a black dress with white polka dots on it. And yeah, I go by she, her, they, them pronouns.
And I am Marty. Oh, why do I have to read that out? I am Marty Davis. My pronouns are she, they, and I am wearing amazing, like All Saints-like kind of vibes. Combats, nice black silky number, and lovely, almost trans-inspired Nike trainers. Ooh. Yes. So, and we're going to be your Ant and Dec, or as we like to say,
Thelma and Louise.
Thelma and Louise
Yeah.
today. We're gonna probably drive off some cliffs. Let's be honest.
Yeah. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. So, as you can tell, this is a volunteer-run org. So, we squeeze our preparation in when we can. There's been a lot of work going on for this event. Forgive us any trespasses. So, let me get back to what has been scripted for me. So today does have a theme, and that is being seen. The panels, the discussions, the points, the research, and everything in between are all going to be focused on the importance of elevating queer visibility so that the community can be proudly seen. We want to show today that progress is possible if we are seen more, and if we are seen as more. If we are seen as more than just a one-dimensional target audience. If we are seen as spouses, lovers, partners, siblings, children, grandparents, elders, colleagues, leaders, and dreamers.
And that only, nothing more than that.
No, there endeth.
And also just want to say that Monday this week was Transgender Day of Remembrance. So let's take a short moment to remember the 320 trans people globally that we lost to violence in the past year. In particular, I want to name two trans kids. who died this year in the UK. So that's Brianna Jai and Corey Hall. Brianna, a 16-year-old girl, a trans schoolgirl, murdered in Warrington in February. And Brianna's murder is contained within the record-breaking hate crime figures that were announced in early October, so just last month. And Corey Hall. Corey was a 14-year-old trans boy who died by suicide in October after enduring intolerable bullying and abuse on online platforms. So I just want to take a moment to reflect on that, because this is what we do. We're doing this for our trans youth, for our queer youth, who deserve to be seen, because visibility in media matters. Trans people belong in our media, queer people belong in media, we belong in ads. And trans people deserve to grow up, and they deserve to grow up happy. We necessarily focus on communities' pain. It is important that we do. We will be continuing the industry conversation I introduced last year on this stage to talk about these things. We must first acknowledge and then dismantle the ecosystem that sees ad spend funding mis- and disinformation and sensationalism, which leads to hate crime. And this year, we'll be dedicating time to understanding the mental wellness challenges, or put plainly, the mental health crisis in our own industry and how we can solve this systemic issue. Over to you, Lucy.
But with that said, we must also not just look at the trauma. We must also surface our joy. The communities that we create, the love and euphoria that we feel through friendships and by being seen. I'm going to cry a lot today. So we'll be doing that. This afternoon, we'll set the agenda for LGBTQIA+ inclusion for the year to come. Because that's what Outvertising Live is all about. It's our purpose. Our purpose is to make the industry completely LGBTQIA+ inclusive. And we do this by ensuring that all the work that we do is done in a welcoming and equitable environment at the workplaces that we go to every day. And also by ensuring that our industry's output, the literal work, is as authentically inclusive as it can be, and that there's more of it too. So we're here as queer people and as a community and as allies in the room. You are more important to us than you have ever been before. So it is a day of celebration, education, and connection. Today, we will explore the highs and lows of queer experience in the creative and media landscape and look to the future of LGBTQIA inclusion and representation. Back to you.
Thank you. Thelma? I know lots of you know this already, but I will say it again, we are all volunteers. So everybody that's put on this event today has volunteered their time to put it on. Our day jobs are in advertising, media and marketing. So we just want to say a huge thank you to all of the board members that have been involved in making today possible and all of the work over the last year possible.
Thank you. Out there.
And also our advocates, which is our fancy way of saying our other volunteers that volunteer their time within those work streams as well. Can we just give them a round of applause as well? So, Outvertising Live, be seen. Let's get to it. So, yeah, thank you, everybody.
Okay. I've got a bit of a gender piece to do.
Oh, yeah, we need to actually do some clicking. Oh, you've got a clicker. Good.
I've got a clicker.
Good, let's do it.
What could possibly go wrong?
I mean, I'm not nervous.
It's not working. Right.
Hopefully there's two clickers, one doesn't work. Lovely.
Okay, smooth as ever. So the agenda, I'm not going to touch on that too much. You can see it here. I'm sure you looked at it in depth when you were signing up. What I will say is that when we put this together, we spend months curating the different panels, thinking about the topics so that you get a really rounded view of all the things that we are concerned with and want to kind of push inclusion in. We also, strive to make space for as many diverse voices as we can, and know that manels are not the one. We do have one manel today, which we can only apologise for. That is, I mean, I shouldn't apologise because they're amazing people and they're going to be absolutely fabulous. However, we are having, we had a couple of kind of illness and last minute issues that meant that we had to kind of sub a few things. So sorry for the manel, but you will enjoy it because they're great. And on that, we are also going to be launching the OCR.
Yes.
And with
Is this me speaking?
And I don't know. And with that, I think it's back over to Marty.
Oh, okay. I'm going to just read this out because I don't remember this bit. Anchored in example, action and practice across the board, we'll be hearing from brands who have created brilliant, joyful work and how they do that and why it's important to continue to strive to create safe spaces in our industry. And we're excited to bring you the Outvertising Consumer Report.
Yay.
Something we teased last year, but you'll get it this time in its full expression as we tease it again for like, and then there'll be a report you can download in 1 week's time. Rodney assures me. And finally, while we've got all of you here, and after feedback from last year as well, we've extended the timeline a little bit so we can get more questions in, because a lot of you were saying you would love to ask questions, so we want more questions this time. We just ran out of time last time.
Although, with our speech, I don't know how.
So please pipe up. And we also have the creative powerhouse, Laura Jordan Bambach, who's here.
Yay.
And they'll be giving us their view on where queer marketing goes next. So I'm excited about that. And I'm excited, actually, I've just finally met Laura. Almost time. Lucy, one more thing. You need to thank some people.
I know, I've just done the clicker.
Good.
So, again, Outvertising is powered by volunteer time and also amazing supporters that are from every corner of the industry. And we couldn't, honestly, this event would not happen without the amazing fiscal and kind of in-kind support from all of these incredible people. They are up there, but I will read them out. It's Clear Channel, Meta, look at this amazing room. Do.com, IAS, Durex, major players who are going to be hosting our Live Late, a long-time supporter of and one of our patrons, Diageo, Campaign, who are our publication partner, and Stonewall, our charity partner. So thank you very much to those people.
That's you, isn't it?
One more thing, we're doing a Live Late later. And please join the conversation on our socials. And with that, over to the wonderful...
Oh, no, I'm going to introduce you.
Even more, I'm going to step down because
Yes,
you're
please.
introing Laura. Okay, good.
Down. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Laura. So, and as Laura makes their way to the stage with a foot brace on, so I might need to slow down. In her role as CCO and president of Grey London, she led one of WPP's most creative agencies. In 2021, she was runner-up in Campaign's Agency Leader of the Year. She has won many creative and effectiveness awards at a highest level. So D&AD, One Show, Cannes, Clio's, Campaign Big, Creative Circle, you get the idea, right? A lot of awards. She's also co-founder of She Says, which is the largest global network for women in the creative industry's mentoring app, OCO, and Cannes Festival. And queer people, I also want to say, we just talked about the OCR, so queer people actually over-index on being well into taxidermy. Okay, I'm actually lying. That one isn't true. Well, it could be true, but I don't know if it's true. But for Laura, it is true. And Laura is also a practicing artist, which is amazing. And we've asked Laura to give her view on where queer marketing needs to go next, given the context that we've just laid out. So please welcome to the stage. Laura's on the stage.
Thank
Creative
you.
Powerhouse, Laura Jordan Bambach.
Thanks, Maddie. Hi, I'm Laura JB, she, her. I am wearing all black. I'm wearing an Ottoboke Beaver t-shirt, which if you haven't heard them, they are the best female Japanese punk band ever. And I have one black boot on and one red shoe on because I've broken my foot. It's lovely to be here. I haven't spoken in person for a while, and it's really nice to be somewhere that's so sort of loving and where I feel so welcome. So thank you to Outvertising for everything that you do. My talk today I've called Over the Rainbow, the Future of Queer Marketing, because we all love a rainbow, but maybe we should be doing a little bit more than that in 2024. But before that, I mean, you had my intro for Muddy. You heard about She Says, so if any of you are interested, we are shesays.com. We run free events, mentoring, all sorts of things for queer and non-binary people, women who want to sort of progress their careers in our industry. I'm also a co-founder of something called OCO, so that connects young people with mentors in business, not around kind of what they want to do or sort of career progression, but actually helping them to find their superpowers. And it connects through psychometric profiling. So you put a little bit about yourself, personality test, a bit about yourself, and you will be matched with a young person or matched with a mentor that is very much like you in terms of the way that you approach things in your life. It's pretty amazing, actually. I've sort of gone through now the process a couple of times. That is weareoco.com. I was a founder of the Great British Diversity Experiment, which is a little bit kind of old now, but it was the first ever practical experiment showing that more diverse creatives make better work. So it was 250 people on a live brief from Tesco, and the short answer is yes, we do. But it also showed a lot of the reasons why we sometimes have trouble within our organisations getting diversity to happen, and it was a lot about leadership style. And actually, if you're interested in that more, please just message me. I'm at the bottom there. And I'm also co-founder of Can't, and I do want to just call out, it's a little bit raw, but my co-founder passed away yesterday. Unfortunately, Simon Gill, so he's the best ally in the world, and was my old creative partner and an absolute doll. So that one's for you, Simon. So back into the talk. I know it's heartbreaking, but I can't mention it without him. So look, we've had some really great examples of work in the representation space, and I think we have gotten a lot better from just, I guess, sort of rainbow washing. You know, anything is better than nothing, right? But we are getting a lot more nuanced and telling a lot better stories in terms of representation now in advertising. So we've got that beautiful piece of work from Google. If you haven't seen it, it's really lovely. That tells over a period of time this really gorgeous love affair. We've got a piece of work here which just absolutely cracks me up from Publicist Poke. So that is, again, if you haven't seen it, a really beautiful story over time, a love affair over time between two amazing women. There was work done for Diageo also this year, which tells the story of a grandfather and their grandchild, and that sort of relationship when one opens up to the other, and actually sort of how beautiful that story can be. And then we've got Virgin Atlantic, who has done some great stuff, but has also, you know, and this is where I'm trying to get to, has not really done what they should have. So yes, anyone can wear any, you know, uniform that they like, but when you go to book on their site, there was still sort of only selection of male or female gender, and they didn't do anything when it came to kind of Qatar and the World Cup and the fact that they were flying to Qatar either. So I think the point I'm trying to make in this talk is this is all, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to start feeling seen and feeling like we are part of, you know, the broader world, and that people are telling really important stories, but we can't just stop there. We have to kind of move on because, as Marty said, there is a huge rise in violence, particularly against our sort of trans siblings, but, you know, it's really awful to see that hate crime is up 11%. That's absolutely appalling. And, you know, I've done work with Stonewall for many, many years, and those figures just keep on going up and up and up. There are a lot of parts of the community where we don't see stories. So, and sometimes, and you know, I'm going to address this, it's maybe because those stories are a little bit more subtle, or they need more space to be told, or they need to be told in different ways. So whether it's, you know, our bi, intersex, asexual communities, other communities, there's plenty more space for us to be telling those stories. There are a lot of more intersectional communities, I would say, that are still facing a great deal of stigma, even here in the UK, if you're kind of thinking about people maybe who aren't in this room or who aren't being represented, that we could be doing more for. And, globally, we're still in a situation where, we have a huge number of countries where LGBTQ plus people are criminalised, consensual sex is criminalised, leading potentially to the death penalty. 14 countries have laws in place around trans identity as well, which is really, really appalling. And we've seen in very recent news as well that these stats are going up, not down. So there is a lot for us to do and a lot that we should be doing apart from just putting a couple of people in ads. As I said, telling their stories is important. Those are beautiful examples of stories, but we could be doing more. And sometimes this means it's more than a film. I know the examples I was talking about are a film, but I think actually for our industry, doing something for our communities means thinking beyond just that kind of linear storytelling. It's more obviously than just for pride, we know that. It's more than just representation in the work that we do, because the best work takes action. And so what I wanted to do today was to share with you both work from within sort of the LGBTQIA space and other spaces where we're tackling particular issues or issues of representation, where agencies have really started to move beyond just a simple film and into actually making a bit of a difference. So, look, the first one is Absolute. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this before. This piece of work from Weber Shandwick is really, really powerful. Why is it powerful? Because for every single story that you listen to on their website, from an amazing person from within one of the communities, talking about LGBTQ plus safe spaces and nightlife, to be precise, they donate money to enable sort of our queer spaces to continue. And there's a stat actually between 2006 and 2017 here in London, we had 125 spaces and we now have 53. And again, they are being reduced. So it's a really important thing. It ties really well to their brand. Obviously, they're a nightlife brand. They have backed the community for a really long time as well. It's really credible. But what they're doing here in this beautiful piece of work is actually, investing money in making sure that our spaces continue. This piece of work, I don't know whether you've seen it or not. It's really interesting. It's a piece of work from Canada, actually. Phenomenal. Did really well at Eurobest. Did really well in Cannes. Beautiful design work here. But this piece of work is called Worn Down by Words, and it's all about microaggressions. And it's not just about the LGBTQ plus communities, but it's also other different communities or groups of people that face microaggressions. So there is a mobile app and a website where you can kind of search for microaggressions, and it will teach you why they're so hurtful, what other things you could be saying instead. So it's a really, really powerful tool that goes across all of these different areas, sort of backed up by this phenomenal piece of design here by Zula Alpha Kilo, which really shows the microaggression and how it feels inside for something to be said. This next piece of work, this is kind of much more broad. This is about women in sport, but I absolutely love it. It's by Bundaberg Rum, which is an Australian rum brand. And, drinking, pubs, sport, blokes, it's a very difficult place to get in. We've seen some improvement with things like the Women's World Cup, and actually, it's very, very sort of exciting, but there's a lot to be said for men and their attitude towards women and non-binary people in sport. And so rather than just talking about it or making a film about how women are great in sport, they've done something really, really fundamental to change men's attitudes where it counts. So I'm going to play you this video.
All over the world, men continue to underestimate and disrespect the skill level of female athletes.
What I wouldn't have been too happy about is if I had to go and watch women's footy on the weekend.
I have men's sport to pay attention to.
Despite what the stats say.
Our actual stats are just as good as the men, and in some cases probably better.
So in 2022, Bundaberg Rum didn't just sponsor the Australian Women's Rugby League. They created a Trojan horse that would make men respect the women's game without them even realising it. Welcome to Bundy Mixer, a partnership with the NRL to create the world's first mixed-gender fantasy competition. Pick the best of the best, not just the best of the blokes.
Oh, just pick already, will ya?
Good choice.
But I scored a try last week. Hey.
Yeah, but I scored too.
Hey, that's actually better than you, bro.
Because you can't argue with stats. And stats have no gender. Each week, fans picked their dream fantasy teams, choosing the best performing players for each position, regardless of gender. And if their chosen players did well in the real world, they won prizes. We even got NRL coaches to make blind team picks.
Yeah, I'm going to go this one here. Oh,
Soka! That's beautiful stuff from Brisbane.
She's been a great touch too.
The Bundy Mixer scored big time.
It's a mixed gender fantasy league.
Highlighting player stats, not their gender.
The Bundy Mixer has changed the game.
Die-hard rugby league fans started studying the stats. And by studying the stats, they started respecting the players. And by respecting the players, they started actually watching and loving the game. In its first season of many, Bundy Mixer had begun to level the playing field. Now, which sport shall we tackle next?
So, I mean, I love that piece of work. I just think absolutely, absolutely brilliant. I wish I'd done that. That was by Leah Burnett in Oz. The next piece of work actually is a piece of work from Spain. And I think it's also really important when you're thinking about the brands that you're working with to make sure that you're really sort of getting under the skin and the nuance of what needs changing. So this piece of work is actually around HIV, but it's not around HIV awareness. It is actually really deeply tackling the stigma. And it's had phenomenal success in Spain to really bring the fact that although people are treated well now, healthily for the rest of their lives, there is this underlying stigma that has kind of been brushed under the carpet, and particularly in Latin American countries, I would say, Spain has got a real issue around stigma. So they didn't just highlight it; they then used that highlighting of it to create a really strong, really sort of PR-led campaign to get the entire country talking about stigma and how to eradicate it.
Varias asociaciones han realizado un experimento con casos reales para saber si vivir con VIH sigue generando prejuicios.
Se puso un anuncio para compartir piso.
En condiciones inmejorables. Las llamadas son reales.
Quien respondía era Daniel, que hacía saber a su interlocutor que es portador del virus.
Y vean lo que ocurre.
¿Hola?
Hola, llamaba por el piso que compartes en el centro.
Claro, te cuento un poco. Es un cuarto piso.
Quería compartir contigo, ¿no?
Sí. Lo único es comentarte que tengo VIH.
¿Cómo, perdona?
Pero eso es SIDA, ¿no?
Pero... ¿eso sigue habiendo?
Me has pillado un poco así, pero vamos, que no hay ningún problema, ¿no? A mí no me tienes que dar explicaciones.
No, pero es que no hay ningún tipo de problema, solo faltaría. Es que la gente es lo peor.
Va, yo soy súper abierto. Es que a mí me da igual tu color de piel, de dónde seas.
Hacemos una cosa. Me llamas mañana y quedamos para verlo.
Vale, pues venga, mañana hablamos.
Te pregunto qué.
Pues hablamos mañana.
Desgraciadamente no me sorprende. Es que no es lo mismo hablar con tus prejuicios por teléfono que levantarte con ellos por la mañana.
Uf, me lo tendría que pensar.
Información. Al miedo solo se le combate con información.
Tampoco quiero ponerme yo en riesgo.
Discriminamos lo desconocido.
Yo creo que es falta de información, falta de querer saber.
No quiero vivir contigo. Eso es un poco bastante desagradable.
Seguro que se va a hablar mucho de esta campaña.
Seguimos tratando a esas personas como de segunda.
Sí, con eso hay que lidiar, ¿eh? Con eso hay que acabar, porque eso sí que hace un país muchísimo mejor.
So I think, look, that's a phenomenal piece of work. It has made a real difference, and I think when I'm talking about, sometimes the answer isn't a film, or it isn't this one little kind of 30-second snippet. Sometimes the importance of what you have to say, or the nuance that you need to discover, needs more. And so that is something really exciting, whether you're from a brand or from an agency, to be exploring with your brands. It's obviously perfect for GSK, but there will be really authentic conversations that you can be having to really change things with all of the brands that you're working with, if you just find what they are and spend a little bit of time digging under the skin. This is one you may have all seen. It's a little bit older. It's from 2021, but I still think it's an absolutely banging piece of work, because it is so absolutely simple. McCann won a Black Pencil for this in 2021. It's an incredible piece of creative work, but just to allow people in the US to have their true name on their card, so they are not misgendered every time they go and pay for something at the till, is an incredibly important point. Again, it's not a beautiful piece of storytelling. It's a real action that they have taken to deliver sort of real change to people that really, really, sort of need and want and deserve that respect. So those pieces of work are all phenomenal pieces of work. There were so many when I started kind of digging under the skin of brands who are really starting to deliver. There are a load that are really starting to do the right thing, but I wanted to challenge you all to just, step away from trying to figure out how to tell a story about a bi person in 30 seconds, because you end up in a mess. Think about how you can really do something for those people. Do something for our asexual community. Do something for one of these other intersectional communities that really need help. Do something to help really change how things are in the world, and the fact that at the moment everything unfortunately feels a little bit like it's going backwards sometimes, because we are such a powerful force. Look at this room. It's phenomenal. And I just wanted to leave you with this, because there is no point as a brand or an agency doing work, even if it's just a rainbow, unless you're actually doing the work within your own organisations. I've got this quote from my friend Leo Raymond, actually. He wrote it about, he's got an environmental agency, but I think it works for us as well. So, people want to believe communications and creativity can change the world. Maybe it can, but divorced from making fundamental changes within the business, it's just pissing in the wind. And I think that is absolutely key. And there are places that you can go to kind of start this journey if you haven't already. There's All In, you can go and have a look at the census, but they have an action plan. NABS has just done a ton of research. This is just one of the things that we pulled from the NABS research, but only 46% of LGBTQ plus people feel like they can be themselves at work. Or you've got all of these amazing resources as well from Outvertising, and I just encourage you to go and have a look at those and see what you can actually sort of drive through your own businesses and drive through the businesses of your clients, because that is where real change happens. And if you can get to a place where your business is everyone within your business is feeling like they can be themselves, and everyone is feeling like they have a voice and they can be respected, the work will be better, and it will be easier to produce the amazing work that you've seen here as well. So thank you very much, everyone. That's it from me. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, Laura. That was amazing. And as I said earlier, I was going to cry a lot today. I nearly cried, I think, 2 to 3 times in that speech. So really powerful work and lots of inspiration for us all. Okay, so I'd like to invite the next panel to the stage. We have Pride and Prejudice, Braving the Backlash. So firstly, on there, you will see my Thelma Louise, for the day. And that's because Marty was really instrumental in the Braving the Backlash project that Outvertising created in June. And yeah, basically, we have an amazing panel for you. Pride 2023 was tough, I think we can all agree. So there was a lot of kind of backlash towards brands. Some winners did it really well, some didn't do it so well. So we are social moderating. So yes, we have David, who's going to be our moderator, and Marty, and a team of other wonderful people who I will let introduce themselves. So without further ado, Braving the Backlash, Pride and Prejudice, enjoy.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I feel like Lorraine. It's exciting. And welcome to this chat about Braving the Backlash. I am from We Are Social. I know that us and Advertising have done a lot of work on backlash and braving thereof. Mm-hmm. You can find our work interspersed wonderfully in the work that Advertising does. I could talk for ages about the Braving a Backlash report, but I think you should just read it. But it's a really helpful guide on looking at how to engage with controversy, with hate speech, with what to ignore, what to engage, what to filter, what to consume, what to proactively try and change in conversation. And that's me, David Leavesley. We Are Social's Associate Editorial Director. I'm going to pass around to the rest of the group. I love that we all have our own mics. I love that. Well, shall I pass you on?
I just wonder if this... Oh, it is working, and I've got the Britney mic.
We've all got our own mics. Go. Oh, an absolute dream. I'm going to start with Ellie this side. If we can all introduce ourselves, where we're from, pronouns, and a little bit about our appearances today.
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Ellie. My pronouns are she and her. I'm wearing black shoes, black jeans, an off-white shirt, and a grayish scarf. I'm global brand director on Dorex, and I'm also the lead of our LGBTQ plus ERG, so employee resource group. So actually, what Laura said resonated very strongly with me in terms of having always the internal approach and the external approach fully aligning. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Is this on? Is this on? Yes. We're cooking. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Sasha Misra. Pronouns are she, her. My appearance, I'm wearing a green and blue and black dress, this massive brown cardigan I bought in Slovenia when I was out there for ILGA Europe last month, which I've been living in ever since, and slightly messy black hair. So I'm the Associate Director of Communications. Good job I've got it there because I forgot. And campaigns at Stonewall. So that gives me quite a wide remit. So I'm responsible for all things kind of like brands and comms. So I oversee our presence at Pride, as an example. I also oversee our digital marketing and communications, and also our press and PR, which, as you might expect, has been keeping me busy over the last 2 years, particularly a couple of years ago when we were really at kind of the vanguard of kind of a media backlash. Not to take up too much space, but also just want to take this opportunity to just thank Outvertising for allowing Stonewall to garnish each and every one of you with the Stonewall Back on Track report. It's basically our kind of like blueprint for what we think the next government should be doing for LGBTQ people. We just really reflect that we've spent the last few years just really kind of like just holding ground, but actually there's much it can do. And just to think of some of the great advertisements that Laura ran us through just now, actually they all, like what they have in common is they all focus in on kind of like one key issue. So plenty to kind of pick and choose from there. Thank you.
Gorgeous. I am David, your resident Cilla Black, asking everybody what's their name and where they come from. I'm at We Are Social. I've already told you that at least 3 times. So I'm going to pass over to the lovely Rissy.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Rissy. My pronouns are they, she. I've got blonde box braids with a beige kind of top with a blue and brown cardigan with green cargos and black trainers. Currently residing in Wales, but born and raised Camden Town, London. I'm a strategist for Born Social. I'm also a trustee at D&AD. And lastly, one thing about me is I run an emo pop punk queer cutie pop scented club night in London. So.
Brilliant.
Marty, you've obviously given us a lovely introduction. And I should also say that my pronouns are he, him, and that I'm wearing all black with some white trainers. But to get into the start of it, we've talked a little bit about Braving the Backlash. We've introduced you to our lovely selection of people speaking to you today. The next sort of part of the introduction is to talk a little bit about Pride 2023, which is a big old subject. And so I would never dream of trying to condense all of that just myself, which is also a dereliction of duty in some ways. But what I do want to start with is our first question, which is to our panel of lovely people. Pride 2023. How was it working in this industry? What were some of the ups and downs you experienced? And how did it compare to Prides previously?
I can go first. Yeah,
Please.
Sure. So I think personally this year Pride was kind of falling a bit flat, I'd say. So because I moved to Wales, I feel like everything is very much London-centric. This also includes campaigns, advertising, or wherever initiatives and projects are targeted to. So it felt very much like, if anything, we got the scraps of a barrel from that perspective of Pride. So that was a bit of a letdown, I'd say. So yeah.
I'm going to pass it over to this side of the room. Ellie, I see you raising a mic.
Yes, I think coming in from a brand side, it actually felt very different to previous Prides, because I think previous Prides, loads of companies were just rushing to the rainbow, and they saw a bit of the rainbow dollar, not necessarily always doing the right things. Some weren't, etc. But I think this year felt like there was something at stake, and I think to that extent it didn't feel like that in previous years, that there was really, the community was at stake, the safety of the community was at stake. Companies actually doing things for Pride was at stake for the first time in a long time, and I think it really forced brands to introspect and to be like, are we in there for the long haul? Are we sticking with the community? And do we want to commit? So I think it was a very testing year in that sense for companies. And as a queer woman, it was a difficult year to watch, right? Because you've been a bit on a good trajectory, like you seen that you made progress, and suddenly it was like, actually, no, it's not as safe or as certain the trajectory where we're gonna head as we all would have wished for.
I'm looking at you. I'm going to pass it over to you, Sasha. What's thoughts, feelings?
So at Stonewall, yes, we're on. Sorry, this will be a recurring theme. So at Stonewall, we work with a lot of different organisations, and the trend I really saw with that, a lot of organisations were a lot more just guarded about kind of the prospects of doing LGBTQ inclusion work. Like, I think in the past it's been very kind of like easy, kind of like a quick win, love is love kind of aspects, and obviously supporting LGBTQ people should be easy. There's a lot of kind of forces out there right now working to make it difficult, and going into Pride season, we obviously had high-profile kind of backlashes against individuals that were kind of like well-meaning, with, I think, Bud Light being the most kind of like highest-profile example of that. So I think there was a lot of soul-searching from a lot of different organisations about why they were doing it, and just that sense that it wasn't as easy as it was before, and I think they were asking why they do it. But on the other hand, there were a lot of organisations that were kind of invigorated by that and kind of saw the challenge there and wanted to do something a bit more meaningful and a lot more kind of like charged around it. So it was just interesting to get that barometer. But for Pride kind of events themselves were like brilliant kind of like inclusive spaces where there's a lot more kind of, a lot more anger, yes, but also a lot more kind of positivity and togetherness. So it's really nice to kind of like come out of it.
Beautifully put. And Marty, how was your experience of Pride this year?
Interesting. Very interesting. Very up and down. I met Sasha marching at Stonewall, marching the Stonewall walking group for Pride. So I had some fabulous moments where we were really feeling kind of together as a community. But from a kind of an industry point of view, I feel like I've just been talking about Dylan Mulvaney forever in Campaign Magazine. And that happened with, the Bud Light activation that seemed to kind of take this form of an unhelpful and untrue, actually, narrative of go woke, go broke, taking hold early kind of April that was, so a couple of months before Pride. So when you actually got to Pride season itself, I think a lot of brands were nervous. I imagine that a lot of campaign activations didn't run as a result of that, and I'm pretty certain that there were some brands that were keeping their campaigns in pocket and didn't actually run them. And then the ones that did run, I think it was a test, as Ellie was alluding to. There was a test of what real allyship is, and actually, you're going to have to sit in the community's pain a little bit, and it's been a bit too easy, a bit too love is love, a bit too, there's no pushback. And I think some brands really didn't understand that and didn't know how to weather backlash well, which is why this panel is interesting to kind of reflect on, because I think that brands not handling backlash well really was very unhelpful. It sets a bad narrative, as we see with the Bud Light example. And I could go on for this for a long time, and I have done many times. So you'll have to take me there. I'll stop there.
Okay. Well, I think that's. I'm gonna dart around my question list, guys. Crazy. What a moment for this. Oh, you're all worried now. What's gonna happen? What questions am I gonna ask?
Advertising is not chaotic in any way.
But I think that is a really interesting point that leads us to something that we discussed in our calls before this about braving the backlash. And something that I have found with clients this year is that really simple, like 101 points about empathy, about proactivity, terrify them. There are moments when we would do a post and I go, well, here's a lovely risk matrix in which all the possible ways that somebody could hate you are here, and here's how you respond. And they'd be like, oh my God, so we're just gonna respond to people. I was like, yes, I do believe that is what we're going to do to brave this backlash. But that kind of leads into, we've talked about some of the complicated moments of the last year, but we've also seen some really lovely moments of community management, of really lovely campaigns from brands. So I'd love to know from people, what are some of the things that you've seen in Pride 2023 that made you go, yes, oh yes? Yeah. Amongst you, I'm gonna start back with you, Marty, because I keep looking at you at this moment.
Oh,
it's just convenient for my armrest.
Okay, lovely. Okay, well, I think a nice yin to yang, I don't know if that's the right way, but Nike. So Nike worked with Dylan Mulvaney in the same week actually as Bud Light, and they got a lot of hostility around their work. It was a simple post again on Instagram, TikTok type activation, and they were wearing kind of sports bra and just on their deck kind of lounging about. Very kind of innocent post, but it kind of got spun up into this whole pretending to be a woman, all these kind of like transphobic things that was like reprinted all over like media, in the same way that Bud Light got that attention. But it quickly died away when Nike just stood behind it, right? They just stood behind the campaign, and then they brought out their Pride collection, which they've done for, every year for a long time, and had a really good mission statement with that about why they do this and why sport is for everybody. And so I really enjoyed that energy from Nike, who is like 21st most valuable brand according to Kantar, the only sportswear brand in the top 100. It just proves that just standing behind your work, being inclusive is the way. So it was a really good counter. And so Nike, I'm wearing Nike shoes. There you go. That's me.
Beautiful. Lissy, I'm going to turn to you next.
I can't actually think of a brand on top of my mind, but I do want to agree that Nike, they're killing it. And what I do love is the fact that it doesn't just live outside. It doesn't just live within Pride. Like, there's a lot of creators that I know who Nike consistently work with, and not just like do a project and drop them, but like for years they have that longevity. Whether it's like small projects here and there, like they don't let you to feel forgotten to work with them. And I think that they essentially make people like, when like companies like, oh, we're family, like Nike actually does it without saying it essentially, but not like chaotically like corporations do.
Gorgeously put. Sasha, I'm going to turn to you.
So I think like one of the key things that differentiates a kind of like really good, that went well activation to one that maybe didn't is not just for creative, but actually kind of like the belief that the organisation has with it. How well has it been socialised across that organisation? Is this something that organisation understands why they've done it, and do they stand by it? So I look at kind of like some of the things that really stand out for me. It's always got that kind of like power behind it. So for example, Wix would be an example I point out, where they kind of like didn't just kind of like show up, but actually used it as a platform to kind of push through to raise awareness of a priority in banning conversion therapy for the LGBTQ community. I think to some of the partnerships that we have, like Vodafone, for example, with their Zoteria app, that's something that allows LGBTQ people across the UK to flag hate crime and help build kind of like that kind of data, which is lacking. And how that came to be was that actually they did a poll, they did a competition across their staff to build an app that would create change, and actually it was an LGBTQ member of their staff who actually brought it forward, presented the problem, and they worked with us and Gallup together to kind of to build it, and it's kind of authentic and they know why we're doing it. And I would also kind of like turn to Durex, not just because Ellie can reach me where she's sat, but actually we do a lot of work with Durex. They commissioned a kind of state of play survey to see how LGBT people are thinking about sex and education, and the all-in campaign that they ran throughout for the last 18 months, actually, not just Pride, is actually kind of responding to that gaps in knowledge and that gaps in understanding. So the key word there really that separates the wheat from the chaff is really the authenticity.
Well, thank you, Sasha, for giving us a little shout out. So we'll not talk about what we did. Maybe we touch on it a little bit later. I think besides Wix, actually, I was very impressed by Wix. I was very impressed by Kew Gardens, and actually in October, post-Pride, when they put on Queer Nature. Because Kew Garden is a bit of an institution, right? So you think of it a bit like your grandparents go there, bit more on the more conservative side, like David Attenborough probably, right? And suddenly they come out with this event, Queer Nature, using the word queer nature at Kew Gardens, right? And I went with my family, and it was an absolutely beautiful event, because first of all, it was absolutely rooted in what Kew Gardens is and was, because it was rooted in plants, in fungi, and it really showed the diversity of nature and how nature is queer, and how actually gendering nature and gendering plants has just been there to make biology accessible to people in the 18th or 19th century, right? So it was very much rooted in what they were. And then out of interest, I got targeted by them on social media as well with the ads. And then out of interest, I was like, okay, let me scroll to the comments and let me see how they react. And they reacted really, really well. They got, for example, the question, why are you using queer? And it was a gay person who said, I actually feel offended by the word queer. And they explained that they worked with their youth group, and they came up, like, actually queer is how we want to reclaim it, right? And they really explained and went to lengths of explaining it. There were some comments that were, in your report, it would fall a bit in this gray zone, but they really leaned in and took the time to explain. And when you went as well, the staff was very knowledgeable and very well informed and made you feel very welcome. So I was like, actually for them to step up in that way, outside of Pride as well, I found it absolutely phenomenal. And because I live in the area, having been to Kew Gardens before, they were wearing lots of the rainbow lanyards before. So I'm sure that they've done their homework before. They were internally sorted before they went externally, and they did the right thing, and they did actually their homework. And I think that is so important. And it's a little bit retouching on Durex. This is even before we commissioned the report of how we can have a voice externally. We did lots of work internally in terms of getting employee resource groups started. We developed, actually with Stonewall, some guidelines of explaining to marketeers what the LGBTQ plus community is, how you can engage, what good looks like, what not so good looks like, what engagement principles are. And I think it is so important, and it will help you not only have authentic and meaningful communication, but be prepared for the backlash, because your senior people will be aware of some challenges as well, and they will not have those panic Bud Light reactions, but they will know going into campaigns what the backlash can be and what their position is, and most importantly then protect their talent as well.
Completely. I think that's wonderfully and succinctly put. And there's something that we've all sort of touched on here, which is really setting up this question very nicely. It's almost as if you knew. They did. There was a Google Doc. But you've all talked a little bit about the importance of internal work there. You talked there about how Durex had done it, the importance of making sure that internally there's work done, the importance of a brand feeling like a family. Now, agency to agency, Rissy. Yeah. Sometimes the greatest thing is when you work with a client who has done all of the stuff that Ellie mentions, where they're like, I'm going to bring somebody into this meeting. We're going to have this chat. It's going to be a dialogue. And sometimes the most disheartening thing is when you work with a client where that structure is not there, that you're working with somebody where that internal and external does not match up. What they want to show is not the same as how they work as a company. And I'm going to come for all of you, so it's not just for you, but when you're working with clients or with experiences where they just don't have that internal thing, do you find that there's ways that you can still sway them to still do something where they don't necessarily have the people in the room, the people who are working with them, to be able to work on good queer work?
Yeah, like it's never easy. If it was, we'd see good work all the time, to be honest. And I would, just some backstory, like I've started advertising around 3.5 years ago from doing a short course. And so I've just like scurried like a rat to my way to be here in my career. But I think it's like an advantage. So I feel like I'm not the most confident person at times, but doesn't mean I have to like vocalize to get opinion across. Sometimes it is as clear as showing data or facts, or the fact that certain data is missing is also as loud as words which are and aren't there, to prove like the case study or meaning behind. Sometimes it is going to the seniors, and sometimes it's being naive and going direct to the contact that you have at the top. Because if you strongly believe behind something, then you will keep fighting for that. So, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. My favorite rat-like answer I could have possibly asked for.
Thanks.
Marty, you must see such an incredible breadth of this, both in its best and worst forms. What are some good ways to make sure that the internal of a client company brand matches what it wants to stand for? Are there easy, quick wins, or is it big seismic shifts? Are we going to have to man a barricade and start the revolution?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think what's really interesting to me about this is the hopeful view is that the brands that we didn't see actually put out campaigns this year, maybe they realize, oh, we don't have our shit together, right? So let's not run a campaign and be a bit superficial about it. It's going to be called out. We're not going to be prepared for it. So let's not do it. And let's do the internal work. Let's like do the inclusion training. Let's get our shit together. I'll stop swearing. And so I was like, oh, that's good. That's a nice narrative. I like that narrative that, yeah, okay, I'm seeing less representation during Pride, which is sad, but actually it's going to be good and done well, and I don't want representation if it's going to be fall away at the slightest point of like pushing it over. But I don't believe that's happening. So I think what's actually happening, from like speaking to, I'm speaking trans inclusion in particular, but it's not exclusively, speaking to educators, inclusion experts that go in and do this kind of training, the actual trans inclusion training in corporates, in brands, there is a bit of a dying away of that at the moment. So there's a lot of competition for work that is there, and people have got less work, and I think it's I think there's two things going on. I think there's a nervousness to engage, not just publicly but internally, and it's seen as political to actually do inclusion work, specifically around trans identities at the moment. That is a big problem. So the politicalization, the kind of how, damaging it seems to be to just do inclusion work, right? So that is a barrier now, a stronger barrier to inclusion work happening. And I think the other thing that then is happening is we're seeing kind of squeezes on DE&I budgets, which is then causing that training to not then be developed. And I think we, as a whole community, need to come together and try and lobby our industry and others and work across the different inclusion groups, actually, in the advocacy organisations like Bloom, WACL, MIFA, and make sure that we protect D&I budgets in our industry and at brand side as well, because we're not going to get the inclusion if there's no budget for it. So we need director level kind of operational budgets. We need all these different things to get a systemic change. And I'm actually, it's going to take work. I don't think we're going to see it come back straight away, but we're here to make it happen. So.
Too bloody right.
Yeah.
I think what's something that I find really fascinating is that people are terrified by a generation of people online who want the receipts for that inclusivity and D&I behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And the most annoying thing is usually people haven't done it, and then they get more and more panicked about the fact that they actually need to do it at some point. So then when people in the comments are like, but what are you actually doing? And they're like, but we're not doing anything. Well, I guess we just can't do campaigns for the rest of our lives. And it's just like, well, you could break this really easy cycle, everybody. Crazy idea.
Yeah.
Talking there about how companies are pulling back on not doing the work, it sounds, Ellie, like Durex have done some of the work, particularly in these things that you've spoken about. So how can people within brands make sure that those things are being done to make sure that the internal matches what they want to put out there?
Yeah, definitely. And we started a few years ago. So we started a bit in a different context as well, to be absolutely fair in saying that. And it came because a brand like Dorex, you expect them to be more vocal on LGBTQ plus rights. And we heard loads of people like, oh, so what are you doing around Pride? And it was a bit of an unease because we were like, internally, we were not ready. And we had a few queer people like me working on the brand, and we're like, feeling a bit uncomfortable there. And we pushed internally, and we said, no, we need to get our internal piece in order. From an employer perspective in terms of policies, etc., but as well educating marketeers, because often you have people super well-meaning, they jump into it, they don't really know what they jump into it because they're not in the depths of it and might create more damage. What we did is we reached out to Stonewall actually, and we ran the Work Equality Index program with Stonewall, which was a big aha moment, because generally I think companies always think they do really well until they get the report back. It's like, oh, actually there are a few gaps we should fill. So we're very happy we are now Gold Award, we're in the top 100, etc. But the homework was done. I think it gave as well the organization confidence that they can speak, up, that they can be more vocal externally. We did those guidelines internally and trained up the people internally as well. And what is really lovely to see now is our employee resource group is generally consulted on all of our campaigns. And I think the brand team sees the feedback they are just getting from those groups back as well, in terms of, you post, hey, you might want to change the language on that, or might be a bit triggering. And it's becoming very organic, and that filtered up in the organization. So we were lucky enough to have very senior sponsorship as well, with people being very vocal in the boardroom of being like, yeah, we stand for it, we're not backing down, and this is what we're doing. But I think, look, we started the journey now, I would say in accelerated fashion, like 4 years ago, right? And it took us that time to get where we are, and we were lucky to have the right partners with us. So it was Stonewall. We worked a lot with Pink News. We worked with her, etc. So we had partners in the industry as well, in the wider industry, that helped us on that journey.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing and a beautiful journey. And I want to throw our last question before we go to questions from everybody else to Sasha, which is sort of a spiritual successor of that, which is you work with an organization that knows about how to help people learn how to brave a backlash better than anybody, and this is coming for all of you. But first of all, to you, if anybody here can, is there one quick thing, one simple thing that can start the journey for any company that is beginning to start this journey of thinking about braving the backlash a little better?
Well, I think forewarned is forearmed. I think it's important that you know what you're getting into and why things happen. I think that when you look at the different kind of backlashes you can get, some of it you can get it from all sides really. You can be clumsy and get backlash within the community. You can get the sort of kind of backlash that you're always going to get, but actually there's kind of more targeted, more concerted efforts that have learned how to make kind of points a lot more politely, and that's really important to understand kind of the minutiae and kind of the dog whistles and the different kind of arguments that are actually a little bit impenetrable for kind of outsiders to come. And how you do that is that you make sure that inclusion is kind of woven into the DNA of your organization. These things can't work if kind of your D&I is a kind of out on a limb kind of somewhere. You need to make sure that you've got the buy-in from the organization. The organization knows what it wants to do and it understands the reasons why it's important, whether it's attracting the best talent to your organization or whether it's how you kind of position and partner your brand in the future. when we look at you talk to my kind of like crisis communications expertise, which I kind of learned on the job a little bit, as you might imagine, but I get a lot of kind of like partners or organisations that Stonewall work with, kind of like I end up getting kind of like plugged into a quite distressed kind of communications or marketing team because things have gone a little bit wrong or they don't know how to deal with things, and we do have kind of like tools and guidance to help them do that. But the most damaging thing is when actually those teams understand very well what's happening, but actually they don't have the support of a wider organisation, and not to wade in on kind of like Bud Light, but actually what you see sometimes is that people at a much higher level kind of like kind of putting out apologies without kind of like really understanding it. I mean, sometimes it's not just understanding kind of LGBTQ issues, but actually not necessarily understanding my box. There's my companion cube. That's my companion cube. Now I've got some Portal fans in the house. Where was I? Oh yes, crisis. Yeah, and it's sometimes people not understanding kind of like the damage that actually these kind of knee-jerk reactions can have, kind of like from communications and marketing points. It's really important that you've got buy-in from all levels and kind of like a united front on it. And when we look at the ones that have hit the backlash, I'm thinking of kind of like organisations such as Oxfam, for example, who didn't have the best pride, but actually they're really coordinated and really confident in how they handled what they faced.
I was going to come for all of you, but I feel like that was a really lovely kicker in a lot of ways. And so I would love to throw this out to the room for one question. One lucky question gets to come and be presented to us. Oh, there's fighting already.
Who do you want, David?
I'm going to say the lovely person in the yellow sweatshirt over there.
Sarah.
They are directly in my eye line. I'm so sorry, everybody else. I'm so sorry.
Hello.
Oh, it works.
Should I describe what I'm...
Yeah, ask your question and then throw the box at me. Those two things, in that order.
If you were Bud Light and the powers that be said, okay, you have budget and the ability, let's make this right, how would you do it if that was you? You have the magic wand.
How would you do it?
Beautiful. Who wants to go?
I think it's my strategy ahead, but I would love to like make a paid media like strategy with some geotagging to like certain areas where they want to grow the most, and then grow that support so you get more of an audience of who you want to align with. So utilize social media.
Mm-hmm.
Marty.
Do the work. You need to do that inclusion work with that senior management team, and until you've done that, you can't be authentic with what you're doing publicly. So that's what I'd say. Do the work. And there's lots of things that you can go into with that, how you do that. But
Big time. Big time. Sasha and Ellie, anything else?
I think, so, to be LGBTQ is to have your guard up. And I think, like, we all have a bit of an antennae for when something's kind of, like, rainbow washing or not authentic. And I think that does kind of, like, lasting kind of damage to a brand. And that, you throw that pot of money at me, I'd be looking to make amends for that. I think one of the worst things that they did in terms of what will follow them is that actually Dylan was complaining she didn't get any support from it. They just kind of left her out on a limb. And I'd be looking to address that, actually.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
To Marty's point, they should do their homework, they should apologize, and they should have a clear commitment and daily policy how they look after the well-being of people working with them, internally and externally. Because if I would work for them at the moment as a queer person, I would be a bit scared, right? Because if they let their external talent hanging like that, how gonna they treat the internal talent when...
Scolding tea. I'm sorry that we couldn't ask more questions. We will be around. Please feel free to ask any of us, any of them. Yes, thank you so much, all of our lovely panelists, for this chat.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
So, next panel, building a better ad land. So I'd like to invite the panelists to the stage, and I'll tell you a little bit about them as we do that. So I moderated a panel last year on brands' role in tackling hate in the media. Some of you might remember if you were here for that. So we're 12 months on from that, and we're here again. So, a lot has happened in the 12 months, and we're due an update. And this is an under-discussed and seemingly controversial subject within Adland. But LGBTQIA plus people over-index on their liking for controversial subject matter. So let's get stuck in. It's actually 50% versus 36% for those that want to know the numbers. This year, we are focused on concrete solutions to problems we see as an organisation and have identified over the last 12 months. And in this session, we've got Outvertising Chair Mark Gronicus here that I'm hiding, and our esteemed panel of industry luminaries. So we'll draw from a framework, we'll basically be drawing a framework for achieving a more conscious ad land based on their own practical experience of working to this end. And we also welcome your contributions too. So really, please do get stuck in with the Q&As on this one. We want each of you to come away from the session with actionable ideas to take back to your agencies, brands, and organizations. So when we meet again in 2024, we'll have seen the dial moved in a meaningful and measurable way. So yeah, please welcome Outvertising's founder and acting chair, Mark Gronicus, and the brilliant panel.
Thanks, Marty. Thanks, Marty. Yeah, that's an important bit of kit. Yeah, I think that challenge is absolutely right. And when we all kind of, had that pre-chat that you do, we all agreed that we want you, our objective is to make sure you can all go back to your offices tomorrow and actually do something. Because last year, if you get a chance, look on YouTube, watch this panel's predecessor, and they talked about why it's important that we are not funding hate in Adland, and talked about the philosophy and all those kind of things. But today, I think it's a tougher ask, but it's a simpler question, which is, so how do I do that? How do you go back tomorrow, and if you're a brand, talk to the CFO and say, it might be a bit more expensive, but it's going to be so much better for the brand. But I'll check with you guys whether that's true in a minute. Or if you're in an agency, you have the toolkit to go back and talk to your colleagues and talk to your clients and say, we're going to do this. We're going to stop funding hate. Marty last year said, we're going to start funding love. Okay, maybe that is a little bit too far, but let's see how far we can go. Anyway, an apology, this is that panel. 48 hours ago, it looked very different. But thank you to people for stepping up at the very last minute and joining in. So thank you for everybody for doing that. Let's introduce ourselves. I'm Mark. I do identify as a cis gay man. My pronouns are he, him. Today, I am very boringly dressed in a lot of grey. Jerry.
My name's Jerry. He, him. I lead global media for the drinks company Beam Suntory, so Suntory whiskey, or in the UK, Lucozade Ribena as well. I am dressed in fairly boringly in jeans and a navy jacket, though I have got a little bit of a rainbow going on and some purple shoes just to balance you out, Mark.
Stuart. Hello, Stuart. I think they're all on. Just go for it, yeah.
Hello, I'm Stuart. I'm he, him. I work for Good Loop, so I'm a head of agency partnerships. I'm wearing a strange combination of tweed and check shirts, quite brave denim trainers.
Thanks, Stuart. Lee, welcome. Hello.
Hello, my name is Lee Maybe. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm managing partner at Dentsu-X. I'm wearing white Nike trainers, a pair of blue trousers, a white T-shirt, and a green overshirt.
How much do we get every time we say Nike, Marty? Is there a deal? So look, let's dive in. And I have to confess, my ex-day job, I'm now retired, was as a planner. And I'm going to go on the journey that you're going to start tomorrow. You're all starting this journey tomorrow. Promise? Yeah, tomorrow? Stop funding hateful advertising. I'm going to say, what's the role for the brand? Stuart, if I popped into your office tomorrow, what would you tell me about that journey? Where would I start? And is the brand a good place to start?
I think we need to stop being allergic about uncertainty. I think people are rather staying quiet or staying silent rather than actually face the backlash. So actually, like you say, get your house in order, do your research, but know there's people out there who can hold your hand and actually help guide you to help deliver a campaign with authenticity, but also walk the talk. I think there's a lot of talking in our industry, but actually you need to back it up with your words and your actions. And that's why companies like Good Loop, from my perspective, are here. We've got an incredible team who are there to help guide you to make sure that, like I say, you deliver it well. We know you've got marketing performances, KPIs you need to hit, but also help reach your audiences and deliver that message with kindness as well.
So we're going to pick on a few case histories as we go through, with time permitting. I followed your career. I'm a bit of a fanette of you, Jerry. It's you I'm talking to, Jerry. And
I was following his career.
And I'm one of Jerry's biggest fanettes. And how would Beam Suntory's brand play out in your conscious advertising strategy?
Yeah, I mean, well, to the question you asked a moment ago, is what role does the brand play? If you're talking about media, ultimately it's the brand's money, so it's entirely on you as a brand to care where your money goes, what you fund, what you don't fund. I think it's unequivocally your responsibility. How much you have to do, and the great thing about being a brand is often not that much. You just have to ask your agencies and your partners and the people you work with to help you in this direction. But if you don't ask your agencies, if you don't tell them this is important, if you just say the most important thing to me is the cheapest media you can buy, the cheapest reach you can buy, I don't care where it goes, that's what they'll deliver for you. So as a brand, it's 100% your responsibility. Often all you have to do is start caring a little bit and ask some of the people you work with to do it. And yeah, at Beam, I joined Beam a year and a half ago, and right from the start, we said we'd have a conscious media approach, kind of stole it from the Conscious Advertising Network, who do a great thing. And kind of from what we talked about in the panel last year, that starts with not doing the bad stuff, so brand safety, avoiding funding hate, to be blunt, but it also moves into funding positive stuff, funding good stuff, and we sell, quite expensive, high quality products. We want them to be in high quality environments. So for that's not just a nice to do, it's a strategic must do. But yeah, it's the brand's responsibility if it's the brand's money.
So back to my kind of plenary role, and Lee, I'm going to move on a bit with you, because I think the other thing I would probably go for is, if I was going back to the office, is where's the insight? I'm going to be tough. I'm going to assume that the ethical argument doesn't need to be had in this room and that you're all behind that. So we're having the arguments with the naysayers. So insight, what can insight do to help me if I go back tomorrow and talk to a client and say, we're going to do this?
Insight is where it all starts, right? So the journey that we've been on with quite a few brands that we work with is start with the data, start with the insights, because you can sell in the moral case, you can sell in the social impact case. But unfortunately, there'll be some people in the C-suite who really don't care about that. They don't care about that. Let's be honest, that's not where they're at. But if you're able to demonstrate that this is who your audience are, this is the value they can bring to your organization, this is the incremental power they can bring, it's a really powerful story. So what we do is when we look at delivering inclusive campaigns, regardless of the audience, we always start with the insight. Who is your audience? I mean, ultimately, if you've got a brand which under-indexes against particular demographics, the chances are you're not going to go after them, right? And no CMO or no one in the C-suite is going to sign off on that. But if you're able to demonstrate that this is your audience, that they do, a brand might over-index against LGBTQ plus audiences, and what is the value of that audience, then that is the opportunity then to go and sell that in to the C-suite, to your business directors, and that's where you can begin to unlock incremental value. But it will always start with insight.
I'm also interested in where the conversation starts, because, largely speaking, we're two kinds of animal. We're either client or we're agency. I'm going to go to you, Jerry, inextricably drawn to you. So who do you think has the responsibility for starting that conversation?
Well, yeah, I guess I kind of said that earlier in terms of like the brand needs to start. I think, although it's ultimately the brand's responsibility, that conversation can start anywhere. So if you work at an agency, if you work at a media partner, like you can start bringing that up. We work largely with publicists, and actually they've been really great at proactively and positively bringing us new opportunities, new areas in this space. But I think some of that ultimately comes from, as a client, making it very clear that you're interested in this space, that you're open to this space, that you want to hear ideas. So I think, although it can be the responsibility of the brand maybe to create that sense, anyone in your ecosystem, that your tech partners, your media agencies, your media owners, they can all bring solutions and opportunities that kind of help us go in this space. But yeah, I think if you're a marketer, if you're a brand manager, you need to think about like what are the opportunities for your brand, whether that's kind of from a media perspective, whether that's from a creative perspective, whether that means talking to like a specific community that is specifically relevant for your brand, or just making sure that everything you do is inclusive. I think it's the same answer. It starts with the brand.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of some of the barriers that I might get when I'm having this conversation. I'm not a media expert, so I hopefully will represent all the other non-media experts in the room. So you media experts, forgive me if I get it wrong. I'm sure you'll pick me up on it. But I reckon one of the barriers I'd come up against is probably reach. So Stuart, well, if somebody says, oh yeah, I'm going to target all these really cool people, but actually I want to be in the Daily Mail.
Not with us, you won't. No, I mean, in terms of reach, we work with you on targeting the audiences that you want to reach. I mean, diversity and inclusion sits at the heart of our business. So again, it's about having your house in order, which we very fortunately do. But it's looking at the right environments to help deliver that ad to those right audiences. And I'm not talking about the big players, also looking at the smaller partners who need that support. There's like 2 amazing publishers who've gone out of business recently because they're not getting the money coming through the pipes to support that quality journalism. So it's helping to identify those smaller sites that have that scale with niche audiences, but also identifying progressive media as well. So what is progressive for the brand, actually deep diving those questions and actually uncovering what the solution is for them, for what they want to achieve, rather than just telling them what we think they should do. So again, from our perspective, we try to identify niche publishers, niche audiences to support them, to help support that quality journalism, but help tap into new audiences they may not have thought of as well.
And I think, so just one thing I'd say that if the question is literally what's the best way to reach LGBTQIA plus people with your media, the answer is probably, thank you for hosting us, Meta and TV. Thank you, Thinkbox. But it's
That's
not just
10 quid in the box. Thanks.
It isn't just about, and those are great platforms which are a key part of media. It's not just about reaching people. It's about having relevance. It's about context. It's about them actually paying attention and noticing to you. Those channels do have good attention. But it's, if you really want to tell a story that's really relevant, that really resonates with people, that's why appearing in spaces that they perhaps are really personally moved by, with content that's personally relevant. So I don't think it's just a reach play, like, gay people use Instagram quite a lot. But it's definitely about a relevance play, about, there's more to the media equation than just how many people do you reach.
You're raising another question, which somebody remind me to come back to, which is measurement. That's another planner's thing, isn't it? But reach, Lee, if we'll talk about your Strongbow case history in a minute, and I've read some cases where people claim that with a conscious strategy, we're going to use that word, like a conscious strategy, reach can actually be improved.
Yeah, it can do. And one of the things that we talk about is that often if you solely focus on reach, you can kill inclusion quite quickly. And so what you need to do is look at potentially the incremental gains you can have, because you might be able to reach me on Meta or on TV or other channels, but you're not including me in that conversation, right? So what we tend to look at is the incremental reach you can deliver might not be massive, but the incremental gains you might have by having better representation, by being on a diverse range of channels, that is almost as powerful as the incremental reach you're going to deliver, because you are bringing people into your ecosystem and showing that you are an inclusive brand and that you understand that organisation, that community.
You've kind of answered my next question, but let's just place it, which is the final one I'd get from the CFO is ROI. CFO, ROI, happy bedfellows, aren't they? How do you respond to that one? That it's going to damage my ROI.
ROI is a really interesting topic, isn't it? And I'm not an econometrician, so I'm not going to get into the depths of it because that would be a disaster. But I think one of the things you need to consider of ROI, it is a long-term piece. And often what you see is that brands will go in, they'll do one campaign targeting the LGBTQ+ community, by the way, having never spoke to them before, and then they'll go in there and they don't see an instant uptick in ROI, and they go, well, the campaign didn't work. No, there were other things that went behind it that didn't work. It's the first time you've done that. You've got a lot of apathy potentially from a community that don't understand why you've started to engage them. And I think, when you look at measurement, when you look at ROI, you need to consider it as a longer term play. Don't just look at it as one activation. Look at the longer term piece and see how in the long term you deliver against ROI, because it won't happen overnight. It really won't. And you've seen many, many case studies on it. But when you invest in the long term, that's where you're going to deliver the advocacy. That's where you're going to bring the fans. And eventually you will see a return on your investment. But it won't happen instantly. And you need to be prepared to put the long, hard yards in.
It's a theme which will run through, we're not just gay at Pride, we're not just bi at Pride, we're not just queer at Pride, we're queer all the time. Any more thoughts on ROI that we can share with our team out here as they go into bat tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, if we get to being really practical about this, there is actually it's unloved on your advertising resources list here, but there is an advertising guide to media which talks about some of the practical steps. And that was one of the inputs into a project I worked on with the WFA, the World Federation of Advertisers. We also have a global guide on the practical steps you can take around your media, which is everything from your audiences, your brand safety, your keywords, through to how you measure your ROI. It pains me slightly to have to talk about it because they're a competitor these days. But we've seen 2 examples from Diageo earlier, and Isabel Massey, who's their global head of media, did that guide with me, and she shares a great case study from an ROI perspective, and they do a very good job of measuring their ROI. And she said they started down this specific journey around conscious media, trusted marketplace, they used to call it, and really overly investing in diverse media owners. And to begin with, they found it worked worse. Yeah, it performed better. They were just starting to do this. Their content wasn't matching up. It wasn't landing. To Lee's point, it wasn't an instant hit. Fast forward 2 years, it's now their best performing media. They have the content and the creative lining up perfectly, which is what we all try and do on all media channels. They do a really great job of it. And I think as now a competitor to me, it sets a high bar for us, which I think we're doing a decent job of trying to compete with. But yeah, it definitely speaks to a journey that you have to go on, because ROI is important, because however much we are passionate about and care about this stuff, if you're spending your business's money, you have to get something back for it.
Yeah, so let's talk about some practical kind of things. And we've got a couple of case histories quickly we can dive into. Sadly, somebody from Heineken couldn't be here today, but Lee is going to be a Heineken brand ambassador. And I hear you did some fun stuff with Strongbow. Do you want to tell us all about that?
Yeah, so this journey that we went on with Heineken as an organisation was a couple of years ago. They came to us and said, look, one of our 4 pillars of growth is sustainability.
Can we have sound off, please?
Is sustainability and inclusivity. So they have it as one piece. And we created a 5-pillar framework called the Heineken Collective, which looked at different ways that we can take brands through the journey to be a more inclusive and or sustainable brand. And when we looked at the insight, what we identified with the new creative platform that had been, or the new brand platform that had been created for Strongbow called Take a Bow, was about rewarding everyday greatness. And the insight demonstrated that there was an over-index of LGBTQ plus people who were drinking cider and were engaging with the Strongbow brand. Therefore, what we decided to do was to develop a year-long strategy when it comes to LGBTQ plus inclusion. Working with one of our partners who's in the room today, Pink News, we started that off by working around Eurovision. So we created at-home packs, and what we found with that was by having a competition on the Pink News website, we had over 10,000 entries, which was far, far higher than we ever thought possible. It was about creating some really great at-home collateral that you could have a Strongbow party. From there, we'd already started having discussions around Pride, and we identified there was a great opportunity for us to take that brand platform down to Brighton Pride and have the stage of greatness. And what we decided to do with that is we looked at the intersection. So we didn't just look at LGBTQ plus representation, we wanted to make this a wholly accessible event space as well. So we worked with the disability specialist agency, Purple Goat, and what we did was on that stage we had people doing British Sign Language. We had a stage area for people that in wheelchairs. And what that allowed us to do was make one of the most inclusive spaces at Brighton Pride. And the results that you saw there speak for themselves. Great results when it came across on the amount of impressions that were delivered, the amount of people that attended the space, but also the positive sentiment that they got not only from consumers, but crucially, their own staff. And that was really, really important, that their people felt seen and validated. And that was a really important activation. And, watch out for what's going to happen in 24, because for us, everything we've done with the Heineken Collective, when we started that journey off, it wasn't, here's a 1 year strategy. It was very much, we're going to start now. Where do we go in 3 years' time? And that was the whole journey we've been with brands, because if you're going to start engaging LGBTQ plus individuals, we're not an activation. We're not a one-off. We're a long-term strategy you need to look at. We're a long-term audience you need to buy into. So all the work that we're doing with the Heineken Collective is focused around 3-year strategies, not just this we did for 23, tick, we move on.
So there's a theme here. You've got to stick with it. Now, the panel before us, great job of talking about backlashes. And I just wondered, is there anything that you can do as part of your planning, Stuart, when you're thinking from a media perspective, can media play a role in helping you kind of avoid or minimize the risks of kind of backlash? You've got a couple of case histories for us as well, haven't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think, again, it's about doing it with authenticity. So we've recently worked with Oreo. Don't know if it's going to come out.
Well, Oreos was going to be next. Our rehearsal's gone backwards, but go on, you carry on. I was going to talk about Hershey's.
Hershey's.
Yeah.
I mean, Hershey's was launched earlier this year for International Women's Day. And rightfully, they included a trans woman within the ad celebrating International Women's Day. And it was called up by a certain website and a journalist, basically calling out, should that representation be in the ad? And they were going to pull back the ad itself. They were going to cut the ad and reduce the amount of time it ran. But we actually supported them, actually said, look, do you know what? You need to back yourselves with this. You need to actually probably do more, walk the talk. And they did. They actually put more funding behind it. They had more scale and reach behind it. And they were true allies as well, because they're like, what can we do more? This is the start of our journey. How do we develop this? How do we take this backlash and actually break it down? So rather ignoring it, they wanted to internalize it and see how they could use it for future planning, which I think is amazing. It's a great thing to do. I mean, Oreo is another one we've recently worked with as well, it's our team in the US. We have a cracking team in the US working with Mondelez. This was supposed to launch for Pride. And it was just after the campaign with Bud Light, where there was obviously a lot of adversity and a lot of backlash to that campaign. And they were going to cancel it, but they decided to pause it because their house wasn't in order. They've got a long history of supporting LGBTQ plus communities. They work with an amazing charity called PFLAG, who they've worked with over for 12 years. They've actually worked with queer communities for over 100 years. But they wanted to internalize and reimagine the campaign, look at what they could do next. And they decided to launch in October this year around National Parent Day. They did a film about 2-3 years ago, which was talking about a daughter coming out to her father and that relationship and how hard it is to come out to your parents. They didn't refilm it, but basically they wanted to create new buzz around it. So bring it back and talk about ways that they could actually do good with it as well, which is where we got involved. So the way we work is actually by framing it and aligning it with their charity partner and bringing communities into the story with the brand. So actually you feel part of the ad. So by choosing to engage with this story with Oreo, you're not just watching the film, you're helping to do good. You're helping to support queer families move forward. Campaign's just ended. It's been incredible results for the campaign. And we're looking how we can continue to support queer communities with Oreo, not just for a month or 3 weeks, but 365 days a year, which is incredibly important for us. Something we've recently done, and outside of Pride, is launch a format called This Ad Shows Pride, 365 days a year, which we're working on at the moment.
Earlier on, I said I was going to remind myself, and somebody has, of measurement. Jerry, thoughts on measurement? And the first thing that comes to mind is, in this context, are we measuring the right things?
I mean, we tend to try and measure our inclusive media buys and inclusive campaigns by many of the same metrics we would measure everything else we do. I think if it's new channels, new partners, new things you're working with, it always pays to over-index, and lots of the partners out there, you know, the Pink News, Brand Advance of the world can kind of help you with brand uplift studies, partnerships like that. I think when I was at GSK, we did a longitudinal partnership with Gay Times and really did like surveys every few months to really prove we were moving the needle. I think from a media perspective, one of the things we increasingly talk a lot about is attention and how much people, not just how can you get in front of people, what can you really get their eyeballs. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the Good Loop product, but it's literally a product that counts down. And if you wait for the countdown to end, it makes a donation to the charity. That's a pretty darn good way of incentivizing people to watch your advert and, you know, raising some money along the way. But yeah, I think, so it definitely, in many ways, treat it as you would other things. Often, unfortunately, like diverse media spends and budgets are smaller than kind of the big mass TV and things. So if you're a CPG, FMCG brand that kind of mainly does like big MMM and stuff, it can be hard to detect it in that. So, you know, scratch a bit below the surface with specific research. Look at the attention. Look at like how long are people spending with this content? How long are people spending with my brand? Are they interacting? Are they actually implying for? I mean, who wouldn't want a Eurovision kit, to be honest? But yeah, like dig a little bit deeper, especially if it's the start of a journey for your business. And hopefully, once you've proven a few campaigns, you can roll with it.
And on tips, Lee, when we were chatting, you had a great tip for me, which was how you bring these specialist media platforms into the family, so to speak. I love the way that you said you do it.
Yeah, so we have a day every year called the Media Partner Day. So we had it 2 weeks ago, where we bring in 30 to 35 selected media partners into the room. They meet the brand team, they meet my team, and it's a 2.5 hour session where we give them a deep dive into what our brand strategies are. So 7 or 8 of the brand managers will come in and talk about what they are doing for the year ahead, and then talk about what their main marketing and business objectives are, and how the partners might be able to support them on that. Now, what we made a very conscious decision to do when we launched this 2 years ago was we were going to bring diverse media partners in. And it was a very conscious decision because we didn't just want to work with queer publishers because on the queer brands or the queer partnerships, because we wanted to show them this is what we're doing. How would you go about solving this challenge? Because they would come up with some amazing insights. They would have different ways of viewing the community. And what we saw was by bringing diverse media partners in, the bravery of those ideas was through the roof. So, and actually, there's one point where a particular media owner got up and actually called BS on one of the brand managers and said, "I don't agree with you. Where's your insight on that?" And it was this like light bulb moment going, well, why haven't we done this before? And I think one of the things I would take away is if you are agency side or if you're client side, bring those partners in, brief them at the same time you were briefing Meta, Clear Channel, ITV, because some of these platforms have huge audiences, right? That other partners would absolutely kill for. Bring them into the room, see what their perspectives are, and how that can complement your existing strategies. Because if you do, you're going to gain new insights and potentially new partnerships you would not have seen before if you only focused on briefing around Pride.
Great. So we've scratched the surface for you. It's kind of start with the brand, use your insight, culture we haven't really talked about, but we can do other stuff there. Specialist partners, ROI, think about different long-term measurement. It's not just for Pride, but it's question time. So what haven't we asked? What haven't you learned that you need to know tomorrow to go back and make this all happen? Over to you.
Come on, someone's got to want me to overarm this to them.
There's a row 4 or 5 in the middle back there.
God, I don't know if I'm good at throwing it.
Oh, of course you can. Go for it.
Oh, good.
It's an easy crowd if you get applause for throwing a box. Blimey. Over to you.
Hello.
Hi.
Do you think traditional publishers are doing enough in terms of the content they're putting out? So obviously advertisers are doing great work, but then, the content that they're surrounding, is that inclusive enough? Are they using the correct language? Does that make sense?
I'm going to give the politician's answer here. Some are, some aren't. But I think that the way that you could potentially approach this is by having very open conversations, because there'll be some publishers who are doing great work internally, but they're potentially not telling us agencies or brands about it. So have those open conversations. We tend not to take an editorial standpoint because, LGBTQ plus people don't just read certain types of publication. We go across a lot of spaces, but we tend to have open conversations with publishers to find out a bit more about what they're doing. So it is a bit of a politician's answer, publishers could be doing more. Some are doing some great work. But I think just have those conversations, find out what they're doing and what opportunities there are to work with them to improve in this space.
Any other thoughts from anybody on content?
It's not my opinion, but the UN Human Rights Council, who have a pretty good view on things, about a year ago said that the UK has a uniquely hostile press towards minorities, in particular towards trans people and immigrants. And I think that is the reality of a lot of even very mainstream coverage in the UK. It can be very hostile. So I think as a brand, you can play a small part in that, in making sure that you encourage all media owners, whether specific diverse media owners or very mainstream media owners, to create inclusive, great content that you want your content to be behind, and using things like keyword lists and other approaches to make sure that if they are writing very hurtful or negative stuff, that you don't appear there, and that's not as profitable for them. And I think that's money talks. And I think as an industry we can move the whole media world in a broadly more positive direction.
More questions? I saw another hand further back in the room.
I love that, Jerry. Love is love, but money talks.
Has that hand?
There you go, Lee.
Oh,
hello.
Sorry, hello. Front row question.
Yes. So we've heard a lot about queer brands targeting queer people, but I want to think a little bit at the moment about kind of the bigots and actually how do we overcome hate. What role, if any, do you see how you would tackle right-wing kind of media owners or publishers, the GB News of the world, the Daily Mail, Twitter? I mean, what role, if any, do they have in overcoming hatred and being a queer brand on those platforms?
Mm-hmm.
If you Google Jerry Dakin GB News, then you'll get my perspective on that, and I don't really want to comment beyond that. But so.
Well, I have to do that now. I'm doing it now. Google Jerry Dakin GB News.
I think it's don't put your money to them personally. I think you can't avoid hate. So I think you need to try and put a positive behind it personally. So I think you need to try and communicate and educate people who hate or have a certain standpoint. You can't ignore them, but there's ways in which you can tailor the message to them as well and actually put them on a journey and help educate them across those channels. I would personally say pull money from them, put them towards more worthy causes personally. But I think, the solution would be helping to educate rather than ignore those channels.
I mean, your organisation specifically excludes certain media brands. You don't need to name them if you don't want to, but...
No, I think, we have a block list, but we also work to ensure that we're inclusive of where we're running ads as well. So, like I say, diversity, inclusion, sustainability, which you touched on earlier, is incredibly important to Good Loop. We have different ways of working to ensure that we reach and support diverse and inclusive journalists and also publishers as well. So again, the very small publishers up to the very large ones. I think we want to change hate into, sounds really cliche, into love, but educate people about different solutions as well. So it's an interesting question. It's a difficult one to answer, as it was passed to me. Thanks for that.
But I think the other thing I just wanted to end on is the scale of the opportunity, because I always have that CFO in my sights. Does anybody know what is being spent at the moment that you would describe as it's funding hate? It's that, I don't know whether it's strictly true, but that's what I've read. Does anybody know how much is being spent there for what the prize is?
It's in the billions. Well, I don't know the exact amount, but it is in the billions.
I think, Jerry, you wrote about it, didn't you?
Yeah, but it was a year ago. What was it, 2 point something?
$2.6 billion is being spent in advertising. So, getting that back and spending it positively is a massive opportunity. I'm going to end on that. So thank you to the panel. Thank you very much.
Really quickly, we are going to a break. You can go and enjoy the refreshments. Thank you to the panel. I feel hopeful. There's work to be done. Always is. Make your way next door. Couple of things to say before we do that. First of all, you may have seen on the flyers that the mentoring scheme is back. It's something that we have run for many, many years. We have a slight lag on our website being uploaded. Volunteers. But please have a look at that. We would love you to sign up to be mentors, mentees. We work hard to match people with the right person, and it has gone from strength to strength. So really important project, launching really, really soon. Keep your eye on the website on that one. Second thing, there's some bloody merch out there. There's T-shirts, 10 quid donation. Go and get your T-shirts. So yes, that's it. Go enjoy refreshments and less of my voice. I have it down here to say that we are running on time, but that's not actually true. But interestingly, there is a stat to back that up from the Consumer Report, which says that LGBTQIA plus people are 27% late versus 17% of the non-queer people out there. So make of that what you will. We do have a slight agenda switch. We will be hearing from Yasmin slightly later, so that does mean that the launch of the Outvertising Consumer Report is happening now. Look, I remember when this project was conceived of, the initial conversations, it was back before COVID. Crazily enough, it's been bubbling for that long. And having seen it grow and iterate, I know that it is absolutely going to be worth the wait. I mean, I have to say, since last year's kind of tease, I have been reveling in the fact that lesbians love Iron Brew and gay men love Diet Coke. Who's got one right now? So I can't wait to hear more amazing, wonderfully affirming, sometimes curious truisms that each part of our community lean towards or away from. So without further ado, please welcome the team who have been tirelessly working away on bringing us the Outvertising Consumer Report. Kendra and Rodney will be leading the conversation. Thank you.
Is this working? Yeah, great. Oh, here we are, Kendra.
Here we are. After quite a while.
Yeah.
I had this flashback where for those of you who were here last year, we made everyone say, it's launching in spring 2023, no less than 10 times. Sorry, but it is launching on Monday. So we're here, it's happening. Real! Woo! And we're so excited. And that big shout out as well to Lee Menzies Pearson, who was the start of this all and who's here with us today.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I'm Rodney Collins, he, him. I'm wearing a blue striped suit, cosplaying as a banker who ended up in Weimar Republic, and I'm wearing very chunky brown shoes. And I'm going to introduce a little bit, give you a little bit of context for the Outvertising Consumer Report. I have the broken one, don't I?
Okay.
Yes, so a little bit of context. First of all, this report is fueled by our partnership with YouGov. We've been diving into a sea of data for months on end in the YouGov profiles. If you've never been in YouGov profiles, it is an incredible platform. It is so rich and abundant, and I think for us, you can tell you're having a really good time when you resist the urge to send a data point to the group chat, because I've had to do that many times. I am constantly holding myself back from sending more, but it's a really rich resource, and we're really pleased to have the partnership of YouGov and know that they are also equally committed to inclusivity as an organization, as we are in the industry. So I'm gonna hand over to Emily to just talk a little bit about that inclusivity and a little bit of profile of our partnership.
Hi, is this on? Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. YouGov is absolutely delighted to have been a partner throughout this process. My name is Emily Balcom. My pronouns are she, her. I am wearing a black turtleneck sweater, velvet cheetah print trousers that I did steal from my mom's closet, and red heeled boots. As the ESG manager for YouGov, I'm responsible for helping to communicate our social mission. And our social mission is to give a voice to millions of people around the world. And we can't do that if we don't take care to have a representative panel and build inclusivity into our research approach. So we currently have a panel of about 26 million people worldwide who are taking our surveys regularly. And when we're looking at all identity characteristics, we do rely on publicly available statistics, like census data, for example, to benchmark the representation within our panel. But one of the challenges with that when it comes to LGBTQ representation is that, of course, there are some markets where that data is not available. And even in areas where LGBTQ questions and sexual orientation is included in a census, for example, some individuals may not feel fully comfortable with sharing that information in that context. So we have found that whenever we are able to benchmark our panel, we are finding that our LGBTQ representation within our panel does match that data, but we're conscious that it may not be fully reflective necessarily of the true accurate population. So when we do have any surveys where we are looking specifically for opinions of the LGBTQ community, that's something that we're conscious of in each specific market. Beyond the sort of identity characteristics, we're also constantly working on accessibility, inclusivity within our panel experience to make sure that we're capturing genuinely the widest range of public opinion possible. So that's sort of the representation side of things. And then, of course, in the research design itself, we're very, very conscious of the language that we use, the way that questions are phrased, and that also varies by each market. So we have wonderful internal research experts who are constantly reviewing the latest best practice guidance, working with leaders in specific markets to identify what if there are any cultural sensitivities that we need to be aware of in the way that we're asking certain questions. But we also want to make sure that our panel members are experiencing a consistent survey experience. And one of the challenges here is that sometimes we do have clients that come to us with a very specific idea of how they want a survey to be designed, how the language that they would typically use, which may not align with what we do. So we, sometimes have to work a little bit harder to maybe bring those clients on board. But as I said, having a standardized, consistent experience for our panel members in terms of the language that we use is very important. So that is something that we very much can convey to our clients to make sure that we get the survey to a place where we feel really confident in sending it out. The last point that I'll touch on in terms of one of the challenges of the industry is that as a market research company, we have to maintain a very strong neutral position on any issues that might be politicized. So publicly, we're never going to be in a position where we can have really big, splashy sponsorships and partnerships. We can't, necessarily on, same thing when it comes to environmentalism, for example. We have to be conscious that we need to reflect not just the full range of the population in terms of demographics, but also of attitudes. Because just as we need, one end of the spectrum in terms of public opinion, we also need to accurately reflect that other end. So what we can do is we can focus on representation and inclusion within our panel. We can focus on representation and inclusion within our workforce. Those are the areas where we can add the most value and we can make the most impact. So that is what we do. And it's been wonderful that we've been able to work together on this report. It's something we're very, very proud to do, and we are very excited to see it on Monday.
There we go. Yeah. So in addition to our partnership with YouGov, we also have a number of other partners that have been really supportive in our qualitative approach. I think where our partnership with YouGov leaves off a little bit is in the statistical significance of certain audiences within the broad spectrum of the LGBTQIA+ community. So we worked with gendered intelligence, transactional, global butterflies, not a phase, all to recruit into some communities in which we sort of focused on the role of advertising, media, and brands, and really understanding the ways in which connection is possible. What you'll see in the report on Monday, when it's launched, you'll see the QR code in a few minutes again, is a whole range of sector analyses. We've gone pretty far, so everything from tech to alcohol to food and beverage to sport and far beyond that. You're going to hear from some of those sectors today. You'll also read some leading commentary from some of the outperforming brands in this report. And lastly, you're going to find actionable insights. I have a little bit of a problem with the term actionable insight because every piece of data is actionable if you're ready, prepared, and creative. And so everything in this report is served up to you to action. And we're really excited to partner with you or else to just sort of help you deploy this knowledge and this intelligence. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to do some sector speed dating. And we're going to go into these various sectors. And I've had the wonderful privilege of going to church every Sunday with this group every Sunday morning.
The Church of YouGov.
The Church of YouGov and Outvertising Live. On Sunday mornings, we meet and we have these powwows around this immense data set and bringing some knowledge and some insight into that data set and making it really readily available and accessible for all of you and the industry beyond. So I'm first going to turn to Kendra, my co-director, brilliant co-director, whose birthday was yesterday, fun fact. Yay. And I think you're going to take us on a journey into travel.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to get started with a section on travel. There is so much more in the report, folks. A few minutes, and it is such a massive report. So this is really just a whistle-stop tour, if you will, a city break, maybe. When it comes to what we have to share, you'll have more to dig into on Monday. But in the meantime, I would like to kick off with a quiz. Who is more likely to have had a recent city break holiday?
Thank you so much, Kendra and Rodney and everybody else. I fucking love that. That was amazing. How good was that? Come on. So we've got another panel straight up, and actually Lucy's going to be leading this one. Lucy, do you want to come to the stage with your panelists? So I think we've all seen the National Lottery Pockets advert. Whoop, yes indeed. Which lovingly tracks a gay relationship through the decades. It was made by Adam and Eve DDB, with insights supported by On the Road. I'm excited to hear how the campaign benefited from community insight to give us such delightful and authentic representation in the work. So this one's going to be chaired by Lucy. So yeah, enjoy.
Hi everyone.
Clap. Can I sit here? Yeah. I can sit there.
I think this is the right clicker, but we'll see. So welcome. This is all about bringing insight to life, and I think it's a really great session to run directly after that wealth of information that you've all just received. Honestly, I adore the Consumer Report. It's just so wonderful. So many kind of like affirming things in that. We wanted. So one of the themes that has kind of been running through today, I think you'll probably agree, is that we want it to be actionable and we want it to feel grounded in tangible things that you can take away and do. So we thought that, given that we were speaking about insight in the last session, that we would get some wonderful people on with us who have all worked on one piece of work, who can talk to us about that particular piece of work through the line, not the advertising route, but like through the process. So, again, let's look at the script. So I'm Lucy. You've heard from me a lot today. You probably know me better than some of my fringe relatives at this point. I am in a black dress. It's got polka dots on it. I had my hair done yesterday, and I have to say I'm loving it. So, yeah, we just heard from the OCR, blah, blah. And yes, I would like to invite the wonderful panelists here with me today to introduce themselves and, yes, tell us your pronouns, tell us a bit about yourselves and what you're wearing.
Shall I go? Oh, hello.
Yeah, I think it's working.
Hello, hello.
Yeah,
hello.
hi.
I'll go first. I'm Anna. I'm she, her. I'm also wearing a black dress, but I have no dots.
Oh.
And I haven't had my hair done recently, but I do cut my own fringe. So apologies for anyone that notices that. Yeah, that's me. Over to you, Stuart.
Thank you, Anna. Is this working? Yeah. I'm Stuart. I'm a planning director at Adam and Eve, the ad agency, and I use he, him pronouns. I got my hair cut today, actually, in preparation for this panel. I've got dark hair, grey dark hair. I'm wearing a blue shirt and dark jeans.
Great.
Is this thing on?
Oh, you had to say it. Well done.
I'm Luke. I am a senior researcher working at On Road, a kind of insights and strategy agency based in London. My pronouns are he, him. I should have got my hair done before this, but I haven't. I'm wearing a green jacket and some blue trousers.
Fab. Thank you so much, folks. So, first things first, let's talk a little bit about the background and the brief. So, where was National Lottery as a brand when you started thinking about this? What role did Insight play, and what were you trying to achieve?
Okay, so I forgot to say where I work. I work for the National Lottery, so I'm head of marketing communications. Very proud to work for the National Lottery. And I think for me, the National Lottery, I would be biased and say this, but it is the most inclusive brand that there is, because the truth of the National Lottery is that it gives everyone an equal chance. So the idea, if you're over 18, of course, you can play the National Lottery and you can win loads of money, but you can also apply for a grant through the amazing amount that we raise for good causes as well. So I think it's really important in everything that we do, we're constantly thinking about how do we include everyone in everything that we're doing. And we've been on a bit of a journey creatively. So we've did an amazing campaign last Christmas that won loads of awards. It's out already again, second time round, if you haven't seen it.
Is that the pocket? This is
the Christmas campaign.
Okay, great.
Different, don't worry,
But we need to play it as well. I've just realised that I forgot to switch. So we'll work it in.
I'll keep talking a bit more and then we'll play it in. So I suppose my point is we had created this amazing campaign last Christmas, and so there was a lot of pressure to do the next thing just as well. And I suppose really, if I'm really honest, we didn't set out to go, right, we're going to launch a campaign in June and it's going to have some gay guys in it. We didn't even know the ad was going to go out in June. That's not why we planned it. And the whole brief was really about a lotto player. The whole point of the brief was to embrace these people that have been playing the National Lottery for 25 years. We call them our tenacious dreamers and our believers, and who never give up on hope. And I think what we wanted to do with hope was not just think about the hope of winning, but just the hope of life and what the world can do if you just believe and have optimism. And that was the brief that we gave to our wonderful agencies.
I think that's probably a good point to show you. So here we go. Do I press again? Hold on, there we go.
Welcome to the first ever National Lottery Draw.
Oh yeah, cheers. Thank you. You drop this. Thank you.
If you want a radio, I would be a radio.
Okay, there it is. Oh, my hero. Oh. Got it.
Want a shooting star, I would be a shooting star for you. If you want a rocket ship, I would be a rocket ship for you.
And then we finally won the right to get married, and you don't want to do it? Go in, far away from you. It's hard for you.
Galaxies, I would walk the galaxy.
Why are you so confusing?
Because I'm scared, Eddie. I'm scared my dad's not going to come to the wedding.
Well done, son. Oh, can I have another cake? Oh, the ticket!
And the winning numbers are 10, 11, 15, 19,
What's wrong?
We've won and I've lost the ticket.
This ticket? We won! We've won!
Wow. Amazing. So, putting this over to Stuart, with probably a bit of input from Anna as well. Do you want to tell us about how you tackled the brief as set by Anna, and how you arrived at the pockets idea?
Sure. So yeah, as Anna's brief was all about bringing to life these tenacious believers, these people who had been playing and hoping for 25 years. And we explored lots of different creative ways into that problem and telling that story.
Yeah.
And I think the most fruitful way was a journey through time, starting at the very first straw and telling that story. And we had 2 scripts on the table. We had one that was the story of an older woman and her relationship with her newsagent. So you kept seeing her buying her ticket, and eventually, spoiler alert, she won. And then we had another story on the table, which was about a couple who met in the night of the first draw. We saw the ups and downs in their lives, and then they won. And what was interesting, actually, is that at the time we shared these scripts with Anna and the team, the couple was a heterosexual couple. And we took both of these scripts into research with another agency at first. On-Road came along later and made it look much better. And what we heard through that research with kind of a broad cross-section of consumers in the UK was that the strategy was right. It was good to tell the story over time, but neither of those approaches were quite landing yet. The story of the older woman felt a bit small. We didn't see enough of her life. And then the story of the couple, that was better. You could see kind of the ups and downs, their full life. But what we heard kind of across the board from all respondents who were recruited from different communities, different ages, was that it just felt a bit too conventional. It was a bit 2.4 children expected. And that was really interesting. And what that did was give us the confidence to actually rethink how we would tell that story and not go to the classic tropes of boy meets girl and actually find a more interesting way into it. And so as a gay man myself, I was very keen to turn it into a gay story, and I worked with our creative department on that. And I think they were excited but nervous. Our creative director is a straight man. The creative team who wrote the ads were both straight men. Right. And obviously I could share some of my lived experiences. There were other members in the team who were queer as well. But we kind of felt a big responsibility to try and sum up what it was like to be gay in the 90s and the early noughties. And we realized that we couldn't do that on our own. And that was when we really wanted to bring in an outside perspective, and we turned to On-Road to be able to help us work and really get to know and really represent that community.
Amazing, thank you. So, Luke, I think you're going to be talking to us about your development and insight input.
Of course, yeah. I mean, for us, it's such an interesting moment to get that brief on the table, because a lot of the work, transparently, that we normally do focuses on kind of youth culture. A lot of the work we do focuses on kind of 16 to 24, a lot of Gen Z work. But to get this brief through our door, what we pride ourselves on Road is being close to consumers, getting as close as possible. We know that our voices, our gut hunches, what we think isn't necessarily what is the reality of lived experiences. Sue, you talked about lived experiences there being centre to the brief. So for us, we went out there, we built a panel of kind of middle-aged gay men who had lived through these experiences, lived through these kind of key moments, and we just went into development with them. We built them as a panel that we would revisit with different aspects of storyboarding, of kind of set elements, of costume design, and we were able to just kind of sense check reactively different elements of the campaign with them to make sure that it was an authentic portrayal, and as Stuart kind of spoke to there, that it captured those lived experiences so well.
How many iterations were there? I mean, like, how did it develop through that process?
Quite a smooth process. I don't feel like there was stages. It was like almost this constant communication as to what we should and shouldn't do. I think from my point of view, I was just so grateful to have people help me understand what we should be doing, because, I'm a straight girl. So, I was unaware of really what someone would have gone through over the last sort of 25, 30 years living in the UK as a gay man. And I think it's fascinating because when obviously we saw the idea from Adam and Eve on the script, I didn't even question the boy meets girl thing. For me, it was like, it wasn't, that's not what I was looking at. It was just the story about two people falling in love and, winning the lottery at the end. So, as soon as the guys talked about, it being potentially a same-sex couple, I was like, why not? Yeah. Why not, right? And I truly believe for the whole of the process, while it was really important to make sure that we represented these people in the right way, I never changed my view that this was an ad about two gay guys.
Yeah.
I was so clearly aware that I wanted to make sure this was a true story about two people falling in love and winning the lottery at the end. And I didn't want it to sort of come across in any other way than that, really.
I mean, it's an amazing piece of creative work, I have to say. Like, watching it, it felt genuinely authentic and representative of so many of the lived experiences that I speak to people, from the older generations of the queer community. So I think you've all done a stellar job bringing it to life. So, moving on, talk about the launch. How did you get ready for the launch? What was the reaction like? Was it good?
Yeah, so it was interesting. Should we say it was interesting? Because I suppose, again, in my naive world of being so excited that we were making the story about two people falling in love and winning the lottery, and going to be even better than our Christmas campaign that had come before. Normally, obviously, within our world, within Camelot, we wouldn't normally share this sort of stuff with sort of, other people outside of the marketing department until quite late on in the journey. Like, we've made some new work. Do you want to see it? How exciting. And it was at that point with this campaign where all you need is one person that has a bit of a wobble. And again, I don't blame that person because, there are people whose job is to look at the risks and understand, are we ready? Do we need to think about worst case scenario? And so all of a sudden, 2 days before play out, there was it was a tiny wobble internally, which created some people being quite nervous.
Right.
It happened to be June. That wasn't the plan. It happened to be June. That the stuff had been going on in the press around the backlash stuff. So, all of a sudden, within 2 days, it was like, should we be nervous? What should we do? How do we protect ourselves? How do we make sure that we're not doing the wrong thing? Should we be making changes to the edit? And I was like, you are not touching that edit. Like, and you craft your advertising to the absolute millisecond to make sure it's perfect. Like, you're not touching that edit. And so I think, it was just, I think personally, I just found it quite interesting and a little bit exhausting because I was so excited to get this thing out the door. And I just felt I had to go through all this shit, unnecessary shit. But we did do some stuff. We got together and we wrote some frequently asked questions. So we were prepared. So we weren't going out and going, hi everyone, we've made an advert about two gay guys falling in love. But we wanted to be ready just in case we had any sort of backlash. So we wrote these frequently asked questions. It was I found it personally quite a bizarre process to go through. Like, it's just, wow, really? Is this what people might say? Is this really what people might think? So we went through that quite horrible experience and then never used them.
Great.
And that's what I loved because I felt like we'd listened to the business. We'd gone, okay, we'll do this stuff to make sure we're ready just in case we need stuff. All through the frequently asked questions, for me it was like, we are a brand that's all about inclusivity. We need to make sure in everything that we're doing people can see themselves in the work that we're doing, and that's really important for us to keep doing. And so we did the frequently asked questions, but it was just great to see that they weren't ever used. And we had a couple of silly comments on social, sort of are you jumping on the bandwagon, that sort of stuff. But there was nothing really. I think the majority of people just accepted it as this beautiful love story of two people falling in love and winning the lottery. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, and it did really well. And we're seeing, brand health go up. It's still out there now. It wasn't just an ad for Pride. It's just stopped actually last week to switch into Christmas, but it's been going all year and it's been doing really well for us.
Yeah, I was actually going to move on to the impact piece because I've got this wonderful quote from System 1, so forgive my terrible reading out loud ability here. So it says, it's a classic example of what our Feeling Seen report on inclusion in advertising calls a diversity dividend. You make an ad celebrating a specific community or telling a story from a particular demographic and making sure it's strong enough creatively to get a good score amongst the population as a whole. But among members of that group, it does even better because of the pleasure of seeing lives like your own reflected on screen. As the Feeling Seen report concludes, diverse advertising unites us, and Pockets is a great example of that. Now, if that's not an accolade right there, I don't know what is. I guess my question to you all, and please, Luke, Stuart, chip in, what are your thoughts on that kind of conclusion and reaction? Do you want to?
I think from a research perspective, often research is a really transactional thing. You know, you're mining someone's brain for insights or data or reactions, whatever it is. But for us, one of the biggest joys around Pockets was we had people from the panel reaching out to us long after we'd done the study to tell them just how amazing the final advert was and how much they loved it. And getting that kind of anecdotal data back from them is just amazing. So I think the impact that you've talking about there, the perception within the community was so strong. And for us, it's one of the best pieces of work we've worked on recently.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think one of the nicest things from my perspective has been people who don't work in advertising, gay friends who didn't even know I had anything to do with that, talking about it in real life and saying how they recognised that they thought it was a lovely piece of communication and a lovely piece of representation on TV. So to have made even just a small impact in culture and have got noticed, that feels really special.
That's incredible. I am being a bit of a time militant person, so I am going to say, do we have any final things that you would love to say about this before I move to questions from the audience?
Maybe I would say thank you to Anna for sticking with it. And when the business had its wobble, you could have pulled the plug. Yeah. When we first changed the script and made it a gay love story, you could have said no, but you've backed it all along. So thank you to you and your team for making it happen.
Oh, thanks, Stuart.
Yeah. Let's go first. Anything?
I'm trying to think of something really powerful to say at the end. I suppose just for me, it's just this constant, I think from my point of view, I want to make work constantly that's about treating everyone the same. People talk a lot about diversity, and I actually think it's really about inclusivity. I want everyone to feel included in everything that the National Lottery does. And so, again, the more things I can come to like this, like I've used today as an absolute sponge. Like, I'm like, wow. I didn't know all this stuff. So I think the more we can know, it's almost like we don't know what we don't know.
Exactly.
So I think actually learning more about how big brands like the National Lottery can make a difference is going to be really important.
Incredible. Thank you.
And without being too much of trying to sell in the value of research, as always, I just think authentic storytelling is what we're always striving to do. So for us, being able to speak to people that we're trying to target, centering their lived experiences, putting that to the fore, and then allowing people to execute that work and do a great job. I think it's just, this is such a case study of how, we've all come together and made such a great piece of work. So, yeah.
That's amazing. And from my part, I'm just so glad that we managed to get all three of you together to talk through that kind of holistic process. It's so important that we kind of showcase that it's possible and, the proof's in the pudding. So, well, whoever wants to ask a question. Oh, we've got two. I'm going to go with this lovely lady over here.
Okay,
person
easy
over
for
here.
me. That's easy. Maybe, I almost overshot it.
Cool. I thought it was really interesting and sadly not surprising that you said it was a straight male creative director working on this and a straight creative team. I'm really interested in the conversations that came out of that. Like, how did you reconcile that? Was that an issue at all?
I wouldn't say it was an issue, but I think there was probably equal parts excitement and nervousness from those people, because I think they were just very conscious of not misrepresenting a community and telling a story that they didn't feel like they had the right to tell, which I think is something in advertising we've been grappling with for a long time, around all facets of DE&I. And I think, to echo what Luke was just saying, that's where yes, having lived experiences from people in the agency is helpful, but really you need to go beyond that and talk to the communities you're trying to represent, involve them in the creative process, because we didn't have a finished script that we took out to research. It was still an artifact that was being developed, and we weren't. What was really great about the creative directors and the creative team was that they weren't precious. They were willing to listen, take that input, build on it, because they understood that this was going to be the best possible ad if it was an authentic ad. So I think it was about being open and understanding where you don't have the credibility or the expertise to lead the conversation.
Who would like the cube?
That's great. We've got Emmy in the bright shirt.
Oh, Emmy.
Hiya. I think this Ding Dong campaign is amazing. I can't believe I didn't see it before. It actually made me cry a little bit when I first saw it just now. So going back to what Marty was talking at the beginning of the event about the backlash, I personally find really interesting, exciting, and inspirational the fact that National Lottery went out with this campaign and the backlash from people was very little. I would like to know what are your thoughts about what was the thing that made this campaign unique and sort of like protected, that made your brand stand out, brand metrics going up and not really getting a lot of shit from people, basically. So what can we learn from you guys to inspire big brands?
Oh, that's a great question.
Obviously it was an amazing. I think if I'm really, really honest, we just told a beautiful story. And the insight at the heart was about hope and about the fact that you should never give up in life. And I think that could have been told in many different ways. We chose two gay guys, but actually you could have told it through many different walks of life. And I wonder if it's because it was so almost incidental to the insight and the heart of the story. It was just accepted because that's what it was.
Yeah.
I think.
I think it was also a credible story for the lottery to tell as well. I mean, the lottery tickets were quite present throughout. It wasn't like we were
insistent on that branding throughout, just so you know.
We weren't wading into like a political issue for the sake of it. We were telling a story about our brands and telling it through the lens of a particular community. So I guess it was credible and it was universal.
Great. Okay, I have 2 minutes left if someone else wants to ask a question. I'm going to go for blue shirt, Matt, person.
Hello, it's here. So I'm Anthony. I'm him, wearing a blue shirt, as just been said. Firstly, amazing campaign, and thank you from a creative to a client to stand by an idea. I think so many creative ideas die because of that wobble. And based on the experience that you had, how would you prevent that wobble from happening again in the future? And also, obviously brilliant in the steps that you went to take to stop that from happening, but what would you share? What would you kind of say worked really well? How did you kind of get this over the line? Because unfortunately, so many great ideas don't get there because of those wobbles. And
Yeah. It's quite interesting because when I think about, I wonder if we'd shared it earlier, actually maybe wouldn't have got to where it got to. I've only just had this realization now, so thank you. I've had a light bulb moment. So whilst it was like, oh my God, what do you mean, you're not sure? We've made it and it's about to go out the door. Because we made it and we were so passionate about it and we really believed in it. We were we're bloody putting this ad out. You know what I mean? And I think when your senior guys see that actually, I'm a marketeer, I know what I'm doing, I believe in this, and I can do all this to make sure that, we are protected. I suppose they believed in me and my team at that point. But it's a very good question, because if I'd shared it earlier, before it was made, maybe it would have been harder for them to, it would have been easier for them to sort of put the brakes on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right, actually, because I actually found the frequently asked questions really easy to answer. And I think this goes back to the fact that we were working in a space where we had a right to be.
Yeah.
you know, through National Lottery Good Causes, we do some amazing things for many, many communities across the country. But also, the reason why we were doing this campaign was, you know, about our regular lotto players. That's what we were doing it for. So yeah, it's interesting. I do think whilst it was great that we were prepared just in case, it made it really easy to answer those questions because we were working in a space where we deserve to be. So yeah.
So not only is this a case in point of great insight being put to great work to produce authentic content, but it's also a great case for braving the backlash, preparing yourself and doing the work. With that, I'm going to close out this session. Thank you all so much for joining us. That was amazing.
Thank you, Lucy.
I don't know where to put this.
I'm going to stand against the podium. Here we go. Actually, somewhat uncharacteristically, we're actually running to time, which, you know, actually looking back at the Advertising Consumer Report, Kendra was sharing with me that 27% of LGBTQIA plus people identify as being slightly late. Or maybe slightly late, to be fair, and I definitely identify that way. And 17% nons. I love the nons as well as language. Do we have any nons in? We have some nons. Yeah, Kendra's a non. I love the fact that you've coined it. You've coined the slur. I love it. It's not a slur. It's joyful and embracing and all those things. Anyway, so I'm really, really excited actually to bring to you. So last year we brought to you the amazing insects activist and campaigner Valentino Ficchietti, and they talked about insects' rights and the state of that in the UK. And it was an amazing moment for this community. And if you haven't caught that, please do watch it on our channels. So we wanted to bring you another one of our kind of, you know, beyond the queue, kind of part of our community with a community voice that is Yasmin Benoit. We're going to hear from, so basically our incredible campaigner from the asexual community, and we want Yasmin to tell us about the state of asexual rights in the UK. Yasmin Benoit is a British model, asexual activist, writer, speaker, consultant, and researcher at Stonewall. She started the This Is What Asexual Looks Like movement for diverse and asexual visibility and representation, and she co-founded International Asexuality Day, which is April 6th. One for your calendar. This year, she became the first asexual Grand Marshal at New York City Pride in 2023, which is amazing. And we marched together as well with Stonewall this summer at Pride in London, which was amazing. So please welcome asexual rights campaigner and my friend, Yasmin Benoit.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Now, asexuality might sound like a new term, but we've actually always been here. We've existed on the fringe of queer conversations for over a century. You can find us on the Kinsey scale back in the 1940s. You can find us in the works, and I'm going to butcher these names, I'm sorry to any Germans here, but you can find us in the works of Magnus Hirschfeld, Karl Heinrich Ulrich, Emma Tross, Carl Maria Kerberny, the man who came up with the term homosexual, and this is back in the 19th century. Nowadays, you can see asexual characters popping up on hit TV shows like BoJack Horseman or Emmerdale or Heartstopper or Sex Education, some being better than others, but we're in there. And we're all over YouTube, we're on Instagram. You can, like, the TikTok hashtag for asexual has over 25 billion views. And the statistics show that we make up around 1 to 2% of the population. And that probably sounds really small, but when you think about it, that's actually very similar to how many trans people are in the population. It's also very similar to how many ginger people there are. And I'm sure we all know a ginger person, and there's probably some ginger people in here, maybe in disguise, but it's not, it's not uncommon. And we're everywhere, and yet not really in advertising. And isn't that strange how often I hear the acronym LGBTQIA+, but no one really represents the A. In fact, it's pretty rare for it to get beyond the plus at all. And I've been working as an activist since 2018 now. And in that time, I've only seen 2 major Pride campaigns explicitly include asexuality. Only one of them was in this country, and I did happen to be in that one. But there's really not that many. And as someone who has been working as a model before I was an activist and since then, I've had the chance to experience advertising from both sides. I've seen how much goes into creating adverts. And there's a very big difference between trying to depict a bacon double cheeseburger and trying to depict a marginalized community. As an activist, I've seen campaigns go very well, and I've seen them go very wrong. And it's essential to know and understand the needs of the communities that you're representing. It's essential to have one or more members of the community in that room when you're coming up with the ideas. It's essential to listen to our voices and amplify it, and to aspire to do more than just create a viral moment. We all know the impact that advertising can have on normalizing conversations and communities by bringing them into the mainstream. And that isn't just what the asexual community wants, that's something we really need right now. The lack of attention paid to the asexual community means that we're excluded from things not just like media representation, but from the proposed ban on conversion therapy. And that wasn't something that anyone really noticed. And not only were we excluded from the ban, we were excluded even though the government themselves found that we're 10% more likely to be offered or to undergo conversion therapy compared to other orientations. That's also a finding that went very much unnoticed. We aren't protected by the Equality Act in the UK or by hate crime laws. But outside of the asexual community, there's been minimal concern for that either. And there's a lot of power in this room, even more so in this building. And it doesn't take that much power to make a difference, to get the ball rolling. A lot of people in my line of work actively feel businesses pulling away from representing queerness and gender diversity. There's fear of backlash, there's fear of turning people away, but now is not the time to be quiet. It's even more important than ever to be loud and to expand the conversation away from just here's a rainbow, from love is love, from the usual stuff, because there's so much more important things that need to be spoken about. And there's more communities after the first 3 in the acronym. You could all be part of that change. And I think you might have seen the QR code up there. That is for the ACE in the UK report. That is the UK's first ever report into asexual experiences and discrimination. Back in 2021, I partnered with Stonewall on an asexual rights initiative, and our first step was to release a report into our experiences, specifically in the workplace and in healthcare. Whether it's on camera or behind the scenes, you can all make a difference. And a great place to start is, shameless plug, but by checking out the report so you know not only what asexuality is and what it means, which is very much where the conversation still is after all this time, but what the community actually needs and what matters and what we can do to actively create change for the asexual community. So hopefully you can all join me on this journey, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. And wasn't that really good? Right? Yeah? Did you learn something, right? Yeah. Thank you so much, Yasmin. I know it was a bit, but yeah, we won't talk about that. Thank you so much.
So we have reached our final moment, session, panel of the day. I don't know why I'm not standing on the stage. And I'd like to invite our speakers up while I say a few bits. So this is actually where my gay job and my day job collide, because coming to the stage is my boss at my work. And she will be joining Dan Clays, Chris, and Matt. And yeah, this is going to be about mental health. And, you know, we've alluded to the trauma, how this year has been a lot in a lot of our talks, and what we in our industry need to do about it. And a big part of that is senior leadership and allyship. So over to this wonderful group of people.
That's a really good photo of me.
It's honestly, it's a keeper. That it really is.
I just looked I think I was wearing that same colour pink that day. And
I mean, we've all done it,
you
haven't
can't
we?
quite
We've
see
all
my
done it.
face in there. Yeah.
Well, this isn't a bit awkward here with this sofa, isn't it? It's a bit, I don't know
Can we do
how.
a mic check? Is
how-
that working?
Is that working?
They will, yeah. They'll come up and down, I think, as we
Okay.
speak. So this is more of a conversation. I think you've had. Are you all right, actually? Because, goodness me, you've had so much to take in today. We're going to have a nice conversation here. So there's nothing to write down, no numbers, no stats. But we're here to talk about you, to talk about our people, because people in this industry are everything. I'm going to start with this quote here. It's a really nice quote that I like. It's from Josh Krzyzewski, who is the current president of the IPA, and he has an agenda for his presidency, which is called People First. And you know, in this industry, if we don't look after our people, then there's kind of nothing left. We don't have factories, trucks, manufactured goods. Our people are everything. It's their brilliance and imagination which makes them who and what we are, and that's why we have to look after them. So I guess the question is, are we looking after our people the way we should? Now that's better, isn't it?
Only at Meta that happened.
Magic. Look at that, the magic. Let's talk about our people. How are we doing? Are we looking after our people the way we should? Are we looking after ourselves the way we should? And then when it comes down to LGBTQIA plus people in our industry, what are they going through that's specific that companies need to address? So I'm really chuffed to be in this conversation and to have this panel with me. We'll introduce ourselves. So my name is Chris Dunn. I am the events co-director here at Outvertising. My pronouns are he, him. I am wearing a beige trouser and a navy top, and then somewhere in my 40s. We don't need to talk about where. So I'm going to ask my panel here to introduce themselves, tell us a bit about themselves, and why this topic of wellness and our mental health for our talent is of particular interest. So I'm going to start here with Fiona.
My name is Fiona Lloyd. I'm the global president at Cara. My pronouns are she, her. I'm wearing a rather dull black jumper with some tweedy trousers. My hair is not as fabulous as Lucy's, and my roots need doing.
Belong to me. Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Foster, and I'm the Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion at Ogilvy UK. My pronouns are he, him. I was on a panel last week where I had to describe myself, and I think I described myself as a racially ambiguous, proud, queer British Filipino. So if that makes any sense to you, that is what I look like. I'm wearing navy blue trousers, navy blue top with white stripes. Particularly passionate about the subject of mental health, both from a professional and personal perspective too. Been through my own periods of clinical depression, currently manage anxiety quite well, luckily. And in my work as a diversity and inclusion specialist, I'm always very interested in exploring and respecting the impact of sort of traumatizing experiences for marginalized communities and how that impacts mental health.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Clays. I'm the Chief Exec of Omnicom Media Group in EMEA. Up until 6 weeks ago, that was UK. I'm also similarly wearing navy today. Basically, everything I've got on is blue, is navy. My pronouns are he, him. Thank you for the badge. And yeah, this is my last year of in my 40s, just to give you some context to that. I know. For me, mental health is really important. Similarly, personally and professionally, 15 or so years ago, I had like a chronic fatigue, and that really affected my mental health. And I learned lots of ways coming out of that have stood me in good stead, you know, because that was a really tough period. And then professionally, I'm responsible for quite a few people, so I have a sense of responsibility in the slightly crazy, intense world of advertising and media to make sure we're supporting our people to be able to thrive, because it's tough. And also it makes us a better business. We will perform better if people are able to be themselves and enjoy being at work, at home, at work. They will be better in teams, they'll be more productive. And so from just purely a business level, mental health is really important. And it was great to see Josh's quote up there. Josh, weirdly, is one of my fiercest competitors and one of my best friends, which is a quite strange dynamic, but it's great to see his quote.
And we'll come back to Fiona.
I didn't answer
right.
your question. The same really. I'm very passionate about this because I had my own personal experience that started this time last year, actually. It's almost a year. And I recently took some time away from the business earlier on this year, and it's really made me look at things very, very differently. I think probably a bit differently to you, Dan. I'm kind of just going on a journey of rediscovering myself as a leader. Based on my personal experiences, questioning and challenging things that I see within our organisation that I perhaps just didn't notice before I had that personal experience. So, yeah.
Yeah, we'll come on to the gap between lived experience and, it'll come as no surprise. I also have had my own share of journeys with my mental health, and I grew up with a parent with severe mental illness. So, we're all on this stage because it's something we believe in, but, not every leader that we're looking to look after our people will have that lived experience. So, we need to try and inspire them to still make the right decisions. Let's just talk about our industry a little bit, because a McKinsey report not too long ago found that media, advertising as tech grouped together is over-indexing quite heavily on mental health in terms of having a mental health condition, and NABS in particular is a good indicator to see how we're doing as an industry. Their calls are up 31% year on year, but up 74% on pre-pandemic levels, specifically around the areas of mental health. So what is it about our industry that makes it a particular strain on our people's mental health? Anyone can take that.
Oh God, here we go.
Briefly.
Briefly.
A lot,
God, no,
so.
there is a lot. Maybe I can just focus on agency, and obviously I know our industry is bigger than agency, but this has been my experience for the last nearly 20 years. Agency. I think our system is broken, and it's become even more broken over time. And anyone who's heard me speak before will have heard me say that one day I will publish a white paper about how timesheet-based business models are the enemy of equity and the enemy of well-being, and ultimately really the enemy of people. And I could go on about neoliberalism and capitalism, but everyone will probably be very bored about that. But when you just reduce people to units of time, and when we're all busy trying to bill and make targets, and we're all looked at as sort of productivity units and not as people, there's so little flex in the system to be able to give them the space to look after them. And that's actually just the reality on the ground. There's a culture piece too, and that's kind of interstitial. What you do within the system that's broken, and there's still things we can do. There are spaces that we can create. But ultimately, I think to really solve this problem wholesale, and it's not just about well-being, it's also about diversity, equity, inclusion, and the intersections between, it needs a complete radical overhaul in terms of how we sell our work. And it should be value-based, because selling creativity based on how long it takes you to do something is ridiculous.
Referring to people as FTEs, I mean, it's just, yeah. I think, we all work in this industry because we love innovation, right? We want to create the next, we want to create the new, we want to leave a legacy, right? Whether that be on a screen or in a media plan or wherever that might be. And that's tough. And it's in certain parts of the world, where innovation and the pace of change is just so frantic. It's the thing that we love, but it's the thing that causes the most stress. And I think so it's always going to be that double-edged sword. But I think the thing for me that I think is broken, and Media Sense have gone out and done a piece of work on this and looking at the pitch process. And I'm sure Dan will touch on this as well. The asks now from clients, the level of rigor that they want to go through when they're evaluating an agency. I mean, there are reviews that take over 12 months, into 2 years of agency time in doing that. And I look at some of the questions that get asked, and I think, are you really going to pay attention to that the way that we answer that question? And that's going to take a weekend of somebody's time doing that. So for me, the thing that we can all come together to challenge is that selection process for agencies, and how we can make that exciting and rigorous and something that, people really want to engage with. Because I have to be honest, there's populations of people within our organization that just say, hey, there's a pitch, and they run the other way because they don't think they're going to be able to manage their mental health as part of that process.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think there's so many reasons, and I'm not. I wouldn't dismiss other industries as well, by the way. Obviously, what we know is close to home, this sense of being always on. And we've crept into this world where we'll respond to emails at crazy times just because we've got a phone here. And then that creates a new sense of normality. So we've had to break that cycle. In our place, we don't send any emails before 8:30 in the morning and after 6:30 at night. You have to try and fend that off. And I say, I'm not saying that's not the same in other organisations and industries, but I do feel like in the service-based business of advertising and media, that can happen. I think the return to growth post-COVID, the pace of change, the fact that so much of what we do is subjective. There's no perfect answer when it comes to media planning and advertising. So there'll always be someone saying, oh, can we have version 29, please? So the pressure that puts on resource, and people can feel overrun because there's just so much to do, and no one, again, it's a leadership thing in many cases, no one's there to go, look, that'll be there tomorrow, go home. But people can feel overrun, and again, that's why we have to look at different kind of resourcing models and make sure we're really buttoned down on scopes of work. How many times do I look at a situation and go, but where's the scope? Where's the lines that we need, therefore, somebody else to join the team to get this done? So real clarity around scope of work. And I think it all roots back to the breadth of what agencies do now. And you have to make sure people like me are talking to senior clients to make sure our models with our teams are sustainable and there's the right level of resource. Because ultimately, it's a zero-sum game if you get to a deal with a client, and ultimately the team's just going to burn out because they haven't got enough people, and it's just not fair. We are in the business of creating long-term careers for our people, and if we don't tackle these things head on, that won't happen. And then, yeah, you're completely right. Pitching, the pitch pledge was a good start. I wish it was adopted by more clients. We've had positive and negative experiences of that. And again, I think it comes down to leadership. I always think of this story where I went to for a drink one evening after a pitch, and I joined the team a bit late, and they were sort of talking about, we got through it, we worked all weekend, and we did a couple of late ones, and the design team had to pull a late shift, and but everyone's here and we've had a drink and we got through it. And I just said to them, I just fundamentally disagree, and I'm sorry to put a pin in your moment of euphoria post-pitch, but that's not great, because that design team were working around the clock and they're now absolutely exhausted, and it's a badge of honor that it's just a nonsense, absolute nonsense. Pitches can be well run. They can be experiences where you don't work at the weekend, and that you will see your family and you will see your kids and you will see your partner, whatever that looks like. So I think it's about there are some things that probably won't change, but there are things that we can do about it to make sure that they're not bad experiences for our people.
It sounds like we talked about inclusion. This level of stress and pressure on mental health is very inclusive in that it affects absolutely everybody at every level. But what I guess we're interested in is to spend some time as well to think about the LGBTQIA talent that is in there as well. And we've touched on it today. We are entering into an election year. It's going to be a tough year. It's not going to be easy. We are sat in the middle of a political culture war, and we're going to see some really ugly stuff. So, what are our community, our queer community in our organisations going through right now that may be different to the rest of the organisation, and how might we start to think about what companies need to do to address that? Maybe start with you, Matt.
Yeah, a lot. I don't mean to be flippant with that, but a lot. And it's not what we're starting to experience. It's what we've been experiencing for a while, and it seems utterly relentless. And, on the ground at Ogilvy UK, I think perhaps my crowd network out of the 5 networks that we have, well, they will often come to me with things that are troubling them. They've come to me several times during the last year or so with feeling unsafe, with feeling vulnerable, with feeling like they're under attack, whether it's because of what happened in Clapham, whether it's because of Brianna Gay. And that feeling of just not being safe on a fundamental level is existential. That's really, really difficult. And I think we're working as well in this very difficult macro climate where there's a lot of political upheaval and the rise of populism around the world. And that's difficult. But then also when you think very specifically about our sector, there's what's happening in our industry, or at least what we've seen, and we had a panel on it in terms of the backlash when it comes to brands and pride campaigns. And so to be working even in an industry where you are seeing things played out within your sector by brands, etc., whether it's people boycotting Target or in a row because there's a rainbow flag on a M&S sandwich packet. I think that feels like there's very, very little escape. And then, of course, within our very diverse community, there are particular communities within that are more vulnerable than others. And I think very much about our trans siblings here and anyone who's neglected, beyond the LGBT, which is the usual kind of where the focus is. And that, I think we're also seeing the fact that within the wider community, there isn't enough support from those who have more privilege already within the queer community to help try and support. So there are lots of things going on, and one thing I've been trying to do with my leadership team, and we have a board of 36 people, is they don't know these things are always going on. They don't know how their queer colleagues are feeling. But if I can let them know, and I frequently do that, I give them guidance. This is what's happening. These are the issues on the ground. These are the concerns of our employees. This is signposting, and you can take this and have conversations with them, supportive conversations, to let them know you're listening and that you care.
Yeah, I mean, I was really struck by some insight that came out of the All Ears.
I've got some of that here, actually.
46%? Was it?
Yeah,
46%?
and Laura mentioned it at the beginning. Yeah, 46% of respondents in the All In feel like they can't be their authentic selves at work. A couple of other things that I thought really stood out. LGBTQIA plus people in our industry 2 to 3 times more likely to have a mental health issue, more likely to feel left out than the previous census. So this is something that's getting worse over those 3 years. Some respondents reported being asked to dial down their queerness, particularly when it came to client relationships, in some cases being kept away from certain clients. I mean, when you hear that, how do you feel when you even hear something like that?
Saddened, really, really saddened, but also a sense of responsibility that I'm privileged to be in a role that can lean in, educate, and try and do something about it. That's a key part of my responsibility, and I think about that in a few ways. I think in our organisation we've tried to work pretty hard around communication and just raising levels of knowledge and awareness, whether that's podcasts. Listened to one this morning, actually. Ali Reid, who's the CEO of PhD, did a brilliant podcast about her lived experience working within our senior leadership team. There was one last week about the importance of sort of the essence of pride all year round, not just 1 week. So there's a sense. So getting communication, the regularity of communication, is really, really important. Education. Whether that is guide to asexuality, trans, different policies we put in place. We had Bisexual Awareness Week. So there's the need to commit to education and making sure leaders are leaning in to that is really important. And then celebrating the community, which again we've had a lot of fun with. Conversely, they're some of the things that we're trying to do. We've got a long way to go. When you hear statistics like that, you think, wow, we need to ensure that all aspects of our commitment to DE&I, the full spectrum, are getting the attention they do. And I think some of what we're talking about possibly hasn't been the case generally. And I think that is proof that we need to keep stepping up.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo the comments there about communication. I think one of the things I learned from my experience when I came back to work was that mental health is a daily commitment to yourself. And I have certain things that I go through now to make sure that I'm keeping myself in check. And I think that sense of a daily commitment is what needs to exist and what our people need to feel within the business. And communication is a key thing within that. We're the same, we have a coming out guy as part of our leadership training that everybody has to go through that and really understand and be able to empathize with people that are going through that, which is all great. But I think it's the simple things for me that can make the difference. And one of the things that I've changed is that in my one-to-one meetings, and I encourage my team to do this, is you generally start one with, how's it going? And I've changed the question I ask, and I say to people, how are you feeling? And it is astonishing the difference in the response that you get when you ask people how they're feeling and you start a one-to-one meeting with that question as opposed to asking them how they're doing. They rattle off a list of things that they need to do. So I think those are things that we're doing holistically. And I think it's really important, whilst it is, I'm very proud of the work that we're doing at Dentsu with our and Proud and to support the community specifically. I think those holistic pieces are also really, really important because everybody's got to go on that journey together. Everybody has something that they're feeling vulnerable about that they need to open up to, and it's opening that door through those small behaviors and things that can make a big difference to the community as part of the wider employee base.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah. I want to go back to that point about lived experience and the gap between, your lived experience and lived experience of your people. And I just want to call out, I don't know if anyone from NABS is still there. Kat's here still somewhere. Kat's here somewhere. There's a fantastic report that came out a few weeks ago from NABS, part of their mental health consultation called All Ears. It's a 6-month consultation, and it's kicking off really how NABS is going to help shape their services to better serve what's happening with our industry's mental health at the moment. But there was a really interesting finding about lived experience. So as we've talked about, we have some lived experience of mental ill health or related to on the stage. And we have some members of the queer community on the stage and some allies. So when you do not share some or all of the lived experience of, and how can you, with a huge team of people to look after, how can leaders better get to grips with other people's lived experience, knowing that they will never themselves walk the shoes that they're walking?
I think Fiona mentioned a word which I think is really important, which is empathy. I've just taken our board again through a 6-month inclusive leadership program, and really it was about exploring the kind of what I think are the building blocks towards being in a more inclusive organization and one that welcomes well-being as a kind of central part to our people strategy, which of course mental health is deeply enshrined in that. And it wasn't about unconscious bias training, and I don't knock unconscious bias training, folks, it's good to do, but it was some really deep work that we did on vulnerability and empathy and cultural intelligence. And those, I think, are the 3 things that are really, really important that people need to understand when there is that lived experience gap. What is your connection to that person? There is some way that you can connect. There's some way that you can make an analogy in terms of one of your own experiences or someone in your family. And that opens up a door to thinking, gosh, this must be how that person might feel. And we might never know, right? And one person can never know exactly how another person feels. But it also requires us to be vulnerable. And that's really difficult at leadership level, because old school leadership, vulnerability was the idea, was the antithesis of what you would be. And what does it mean to be a vulnerable leader when we still do have to be authoritative, or we still do have to be strong, we still do have to inspire confidence, but how do we get that mix right of still being a vulnerable leader where we can lean into getting things wrong, where we can ask the right questions? I think those are the 3 things that I think are really important for us to kind of close that lived experience gap.
Yeah, we've developed inclusive behaviours, which sounds like, okay, here's another kind of textbook solution to a problem. It's not about that. But within that, we were in a workshop, and we were talking about the difference between being a passive and an active ally. And I was sitting there thinking, yeah, I've done loads to educate myself over the last 2 years, particularly. Felt like in our organisation we were talking a lot and not actually taking steps. So I made sure I was educating myself and reading books and podcasts and everything. And so, but I was being challenged back in this session that we had, and the guys was just saying, well, but you're not an active ally, are you? I was like, I am. I've been doing all this reading. Like, what do you mean? And they said, you're not doing anything with it. And I kind of wrestled with that for a bit. And then I realised I was coming up short. And so from my own personal experience, it was that I think we've found quite valuable in our organisation is how you make sure that the education and is a first step, but it's actually how you take that forward and making sure you're then going out and trying to get closer to lived experience and not just kind of sitting back. I think that for me, I know it almost sounds a bit theoretical, but it's sort of mentally when you realise that you think people are taking active steps by just, as I say, educating themselves and being a good person, but it's actually what you can do. Are you going to events? Are you showing your support? Are you checking how people's weekends were? And I think that is quite an important step to take that most organisations can do.
Yeah. I want to take this in a slightly different direction, and this is based on some of the experience I had when I was out, and I was trying to understand what was happening to me when I was diagnosed with anxiety and how the brain works and how different environments impact the brain and all of that stuff. I just needed to understand the science behind everything, and it led me down a path of really understanding neurodiversity as well, and learning things about how certain people operate. And I think that, again, is really important for this community, because there was some statistics as well in the report around autistic people being much more likely to be asexual, and then it was transgender. You see, I apologise. I am a menopausal female, and I can never remember all of the statistics. So yeah, there we go. I just thought that was fascinating, and I think that all of that stuff as well, like as leaders, like really understanding how different brains work, how different people, setting people up for success within an organisation, it's made me come back to the organisation and look at people and go, yeah, I kind of understand them a little bit more, because I understand how brains work, and I understand how certain people need to be in certain swim lanes to be successful. And it's made me have conversations about, maybe you're in the wrong job. You think you want to be this, an account lead, but actually, I don't think that's the right route for you, because I understand now how they work. So I think that's a really important part of this conversation for this community, of how we can support this community, is really understanding neurodiversity as well, because there's definitely a huge percentage of people that are neurodivergent, even if they don't know it.
One of the things I should say is that I think I've found personally really interesting is as we've created more opportunities for forums for people to connect with people across our organisation, the opportunity that presents for someone like me to go in and spend time and listen and chat, hear more about lived experience, hear more about the serious challenges people have faced in different walks of life, I think is also really important and something that we're encouraging.
Thank you so much. I could keep going. I've been cracking the whip all day about everyone going to time, and everyone has other than me. So I'm sorry about that. We could keep talking. Listen, we're never going to solve this in 25, 30 minutes, but I am, I feel encouraged that we have leaders like these three able to get on a stage and help kick off change. So please show your appreciation. Thank you so much. And back to Lucy and Marty to wrap up.
Wow. It is really encouraging hearing all of the work that is being done to support us. And yeah, I'm neurodiverse, as Fiona knows. And she made a point of, when I was new to the business, talking about setting me up for success. So knowing that support is there it means a huge amount.
Also, my neurodiverse brain has not read all of that report yet.
No.
But so some of those things were new to me. So that was really great to hear them in a method that I appreciate. So yeah.
True. So this is it. This is kind of the closing. And I've got a very short list here to say thank you so much to all of the speakers. Thank you to the volunteers who have put today together in a far slicker fashion than I have attempted to compare with Marty. Thank you again to our sponsors, and thank you to you, the audience, who have come and made this just all worth it. So, yeah, we love you very deeply. Thank you for joining us today. For those who can stick around, we are going to go to major players after this. I sped through this earlier.
So another OCR fact for you, Advertising Consumer Report fact. Queer people are statistically double likely, I don't know if that's how you say it, double likely to identify as geeky. So I know you're going to really fucking love doing this survey. And if you're not queer enough. This is a queer test. And I'll be personally very disappointed because it took me some time to put this together, personally. So please do fill this out, because actually it's really, really important for us to be able to get sponsors, and we've been talking about that today, right?
Get
to be able to
your
get
phones
sponsors
out.
for this event.
Come on.
Phones out, QR code, scan that, and then as you're doing that, I'm going to hand back to Lucy to talk about the fun plans next.
Great. Seamless.
It was, wasn't it?
So, yes, for the next part, we are going over to our lovely partners, major players, for Outvertising Live Late. Networking, drinks, lols, chatting about lots of facts and stats. Join us. I think the address is not there, but it is somewhere else.
We'll take you there.
Okay.
It's a bit of a walk, but yeah, follow us, like Pied Piper. But before you do that and before you leave, I just want to finish off by actually thanking you, Lucy. You've given all the thank yous, but actually, can we thank Lucy for everything that she's done today? Thank you. So Lucy has been, one of the key pillars to this event and actually to our organisation for the last 3 years now. And Lucy's been, joint CEO for that whole time and actually been here a lot longer than that as well.
I'm really old.
At the point where advertising was really above a pub and occasionally in a boardroom. So I just want to, I've got this written down because I want to get it right because it's really important to me. So please indulge me.
Down.
Yeah, let's both sit down. Please indulge me while I thank Lucy because Lucy is going to be handing over the reins to the joint CEOship very shortly. And I just want to say a few words about that. So firstly, thank you, Lucy, for 3 years as joint CEO. And Lucy has been absolutely fundamental to our success and fundamental to the success of today, like I said. And it's been their vision to make advertising more than it was. And that's taken us all the way to today. Look, our room's packed. Isn't it amazing? And Lucy really had that belief that advertising could be bigger and more impactful. And yeah, she set about making that happen. She gets shit done. That's basically what you need to know about Lucy. And she was the one that actually made this role joint, which was a really great decision. And all of our roles actually joint, so doubled our volunteer energy in terms of the board. So you're going to just have to accept all this, Lucy.
I actually can't speak.
and this year, the Outvertising actually was launched. And again, that was Lucy pushing forward advertising and what it can do. And a lot of you in this room are advocates and are volunteers.
And I came up with a word, which is something that I'm most proud of in my life.
Didn't have that here, but that is true. She's challenged all of us to do more and to be better with great passion. And she strengthened our foundations as an organisation. The organisation is now a more professional outfit as a result.
I mean,
that's not like a swipe at you, Mark. But like it is just more professional now, and I really value that, and I think that's a really big part of your influence.
Which is really strange, given what we've all seen today.
Yeah, yeah, it's got a way to go. It's fine. She's done all of this with great care, and she's grown Outvertising, as I've said. She's grown me, and all of us, I think, in some way, can appreciate how much she's helped them grow. She's guided me on how to deliver in this role over the past year. And the thing I love about this organisation in particular, Outvertising, is the true friendship that it actually creates. It sounds sappy, but it's really true. Lucy is a very, very close friend now. We were close before, but we're really close now. And this year's been really tough, and it's been really tough. And we've been able to share tears and be in your little snug at your home and like really re-steel ourselves for what we need to do. And Lucy also is an amazing plotter. Great plotter. The best collaborator in our mission to make advertising completely LGBTQIA+ inclusive. So, I'm going to miss her. I'm going to miss working with her this closely in this role because we're like one brain at this point. Yeah. So, what's she going to do now? What is she going to do now? That's what I've been asking. But today, hopefully I got the answer, because the Outvertising Consumer Report told us that bisexual women over-index on the love of Build-A-Bear Workshop.
Busted!
So according to the OCR, I imagine you're off to build some bears.
100%, just so all of you lovely bears out there can enjoy them.
Doing the queer service there.
Yeah.
And glorious, professional, successful bears with strong foundations they will be. So all that's left to say is, Emmy, can we have some flowers, please? Oh. And I've also personally got you a Build-A-Bear voucher.
Oh, you absolute asshole. Thank you.
So can we, give Lucy an amazing, yes. I want Lucy to cry. Say something.
I know that basically I do it for all of you. And I just love advertising so much. Sorry,
I won't be happy until mascara is running.
Stop it. Shoo. I attended the first meeting, and it was weirdly at the Cabinet Office. And there was an actual throne in there, and we were told that if we sat on that seat, we'd committed treason. And I thought, I'm coming back. No, but genuinely, I went to that meeting and I knew nothing about the projects, and I looked around the room and I just knew that I'd found my people. It's going to be very hard to leave, so I've decided that I'm just going to hang around a bit. No. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to Mark, who, offered up this amazing opportunity to me. Thank you to everyone. I'm going to go and drink some wine now. See you at Major Players.